Good evening, and welcome to the April 8th meeting of, it's been a long year already, the April 8th meeting of the Livermore City Council. Let the roll call show that everyone is present and accounted for. Call the meeting to order. And let me say thank you for everybody covering the last meeting. I did a fantastic job. Greatly appreciate that. It was somewhat disconcerting to see how well everybody could do without me. But thank you for coming. The Vice Mayor did a great job. I watched the on demand, so terrific job. Thank you very much. It was sort of an out-of-body experience seeing the whole thing going on without me. With that, I ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Question for the City Attorney. Was there any reportable action taken in the closed session?
Mr. Mayor, no, there was not.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to proclamations and presentations. We're proclaiming April 26th as Arbor Day. And I've got a proclamation here that whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas the purpose of the designation is to encourage the planting of trees in appropriate areas of the urban forest and wildlands, to encourage appreciation, protection, renewal, and sound management of our forests. And whereas trees improve the quality of urban environments by preventing erosion, controlling the wind, reducing noise and air pollution, mitigating the impacts of heat islands, and by enhancing the aesthetic quality of life. And whereas in observance of Arbor Day, members of the Livermore Beautification Committee, volunteers, and city staff will visit second grade classes throughout Livermore on April 24th and April 25th to inspire children to plant, nurture, and celebrate trees and distribute informational materials. And whereas in dedication to all 2019 second grade classes within the city, a tree will be planted at the Maintenance City Service Center on May 4th, 2019. Remember that date. We're coming back to that. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore hereby proclaims April 26th, 2019 as Arbor Day in Livermore and urges all residents to observe this day by planting trees where appropriate and or participating in programs in support of Arbor Day. And I have Jeff Schaefer who will be receiving this.
Once again, I'd like to thank the City Council and all the staff that are involved in this. As many of you know, this is well into past our 20th year of doing this. I'm here on behalf of the Beautification Committee. They've been very, very actively involved in this, and they have been integral in what we're doing. This year we'll be going to the classrooms, and again, as you mentioned, the second graders, we have seed packets for them, we have educational material, and we have numerous other things, plus we'll be providing about a 30-minute educational program to each of those second grade classes throughout Livermore. And as you mentioned, we'll be planting a tree on May 4th, which is the next item up. So again, we appreciate your support on this, as always. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Schaefer, of course, is our Maintenance and Golf Operations Manager. So he's doing a great job at that. In respect to May 4th, a couple of years now, I've actually been the one planting that tree out at the maintenance center. So that's
sure
one of the fun things that we get to do at the with the all the service days. So with that, let me get to the next proclamation, which is Community Service Recognition Month. And whereas Livermore has a strong tradition of community service and volunteerism, and whereas Community Service Recognition Month is a time to celebrate the efforts of volunteers at local, state, and national levels, And whereas Community Service Recognition Month highlights the significant difference that volunteers are making in our society, as well as the impact of their contribution toward those in need. Volunteers gain a greater understanding of how their actions will affect the well-being of the public, and often find that giving of themselves results in the feeling of greater sense of purpose and social connectivity. And whereas in Livermore, volunteers are the true heart and soul of our community. Over the past year, the City of Livermore benefited from the efforts of over 1,000 volunteers, both as individuals and from different organizations. These volunteers assist with city programs and completed over 40 projects throughout the city, working together to make Livermore a better place for all. And whereas May 4th is Community Service Day, where the city will be partnering with various community organizations to coordinate projects around the city of Livermore, such as maintenance projects at Livermore schools and with local nonprofits. And whereas the city will sponsor a fair to provide future volunteer outreach opportunities for over 20 nonprofit groups. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Livermore thanks all of the hardworking volunteers and encourages residents of Livermore to volunteer to help bring about a positive change in the lives of others and in our community. Once again.
Thank you for all your support. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Once again, Jeff Schaefer, the maintenance manager. This is, as many of you know, this is something that, again, also is over 20 years, and it's something particularly that Mayor Marchand and the council have given strong support. I first wanted to say that I want to bring two people up because this year is a real watershed moment in that we are really expanding what we do. And these two gentlemen and their organizations are the reason where we're at. And one is Tom Doyle from LARPD and Glenn Sherman from the school district. Both of these gentlemen and the organizations have been tremendous this year. This proclamation is really to all three organizations. They have been so important to that. First off, any information that anybody needs, they can go to any of these three organizations, the city, the school district, or LARPD, to get information on it. And again, as you said, the event is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. So breakfast is, and check-in is at 8 o'clock. And this year, thanks to Mr. Sherman, we will have the Granada High School Band there playing in the morning, and it will be Star Wars themed.
Star Wars themed music.
Yes,
right?
and then we will go out to the projects. I promised this year to have water for Mr. Roberts, the city managers, and others, because one year it was about 100 degrees, and I forgot that little item, so we'll have that. Everybody will go out to the projects. They'll come back. And the projects, as you mentioned, we have numerous projects that we're doing besides the creek cleanup and all that. But one of them that I wanted to mention is that and this is also, I know that two of you are on the subcommittee for homeless, but we take T-shirts and we turn them into bags for the homeless. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we're going to be doing a number of things with the homeless, including not serving them, allowing them to serve. As some of you may know, last year it brought tears to our eyes when we were down cleaning a creek and someone who was residing down there said, "Can I help?" They ended up helping, and they ended up coming to the event, and they said, for once, I'm able to serve others than feel like I'm not having to always be served. And so this year we're working with Claudia Young with the city to involve the homeless because they are part of our community, but not as homeless, they're part of our community. And so we're looking to actively involve them this year in projects and things like that so they can participate. We're also looking to add some more projects. We want to get projects that are not just on this date. I know Councilman Monroe has spoke on this, and so we're looking to add some projects that are on different days and different times so that if someone can't make it on a Saturday morning, there's other times that they can do that. Then we return to Carnegie Park for a thank you, appreciation. And at that time, we're not only going to have an appreciation and a thank you, but we have two bands this year, that local high school students who have bands who will actually be playing, and it actually last year turned into a fair, of a concert fair. And so that was pretty good. Again, we'd like to thank the CityServe. They have been actively involved, a tremendous organization that's been helping us. And so again, our goal is not to make community service. While we appreciate May 4th and you proclaiming that, we want community service to be 365 days a year. We want to be able to provide a program where we're serving them providing opportunities for them to serve every single day. So again, you can get information on the 3 websites, including cityoflivermore.net. Again, I'd like to really thank my 2 colleagues in LARPD. This year, for the first time, LARPD is doing all the signups online through their registration program, and they've done that all just out of being supportive. And Glenn has been tremendous with the school district in developing a lot of projects, as has Tom. So again, we hope to see everyone on May 4th and at the other projects. Again, we thank you.
Great, thank you. And of course, if somebody wants to sign up, they can go to the LARPD website and look for the Community Service Day, or CSD, and do the search, and the sign up is right there.
And they're all there, and they can sign up individually, do all the projects, or select which project explains what project they might want to do. And again, I'd also thank you. It's for all ages. We try to make these projects from young to old. If you have disabilities, we have projects for that. We want everybody to feel like they can serve. We don't want anybody to say, I couldn't serve because. No, we're trying to make every opportunity.
Well, and what was so great was last year, there were troops of Girl Scouts that were out there. I saw a bunch of them down at the Hageman Farm,
Yes.
and they were painting.
Yes.
And as you said, they're all levels of ages that can work on this. And it's inspiring because these young people are learning how important it is to volunteer and to serve the community. And this is a real great opportunity for them, and to see families out there working together. It really is gratifying. So you can start with breakfast at the Carnegie Library Park, and then we go off and start working throughout the community, and then come back around noon, and we serve lunch.
Yes, and there'll be a community fair for booths, so you to sign up. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. There'll be a fair. Last year we had over 20 booths of community opportunities for people to serve in other areas and dates and times.
Great. So we'll see everybody on May 4th.
Yes. Thank
Excellent.
you again.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on these, but may be brought back at another time. So with that, I have Greg Scott, Brent Seiler, and Jim Goff. Mr. Scott.
I am Greg Scott. I speak on homelessness in Livermore, the homeless games. Livermore, if you want to know about the homeless games in Livermore, it is simple. Telling would be a data dump of the coordinated entry file kept by the coordinated entry service provider, Abode Services. No names are needed, just the durations and count of the still unsheltered out there from the time they signed up for coordinated entry to the present. This would be a transparent measure of the effectiveness, or as I contend, the ineffectiveness of the overall homeless issue here in Livermore. It would also be a measure of the fatuousness of a considerable part of the money resources spent on homelessness here. The 2018 point-in-time count for the number of 2017 homeless here in Livermore was 243. For Alameda County, it was over 5,600, and for California, it was around 130,000. In California, of these 130,000, over 12,000 of them are homeless veterans. This is what we do for citizens who serve their country. Here in Livermore, we have homeless veteran Richard French. While Mr. French was in the hospital, his son's car he was using was towed away from the Walmart parking lot. The car contained his medications and paperwork, which he has yet to been unable to retrieve. This is how we here treat our homeless veterans. There is a female homeless veteran who has been living in her car in Livermore for over 7 years. She served her country for 10 years in the United States Navy. She has a Veteran Affairs subsidized housing voucher through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Her caseworker at Veterans Affairs gives her a 3% chance of finding housing with the voucher. Landlords will not rent to her even though the voucher is effectively cash money. Discrimination by race, creed, color, and religion is illegal. However, economic discrimination is deemed acceptable. This is how we treat those who served our country and are in need. The point-in-time count apparently does not count homeless primary and secondary school children. They fall under the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's continuum of care count. 130,000 school children are homeless in California on any given day, or 4.3% of California's school children. The U.S. average is 2.8%, or over 1.2 million school children are homeless nationally. In Alameda County, 1.8%, or just over 4,100 school children are homeless on any given day. This is one child in every 2 classrooms is homeless here in Alameda County. I must be mistaken. I thought children were our future. Councilwoman Monroe, not a personal attack. However, I found your comments and matters for consideration in the last city council meeting in regard to the housing element and homelessness deeply disturbing. You closed with, "That's life." Thank you for your triteness. Thank you. You left out half of the equation. It is also death. Homelessness by cultural malice is also a long-term death sentence. Frustrating, you said, Councilman Monroe? Give up your roof, your bed, and your private bathroom and spend a night out unsheltered. My bet is that you will have a new concept of frustrating by dawn. What is the imperative? Tomorrow, Tuesday at 7 p.m., there will be another patty cake meeting of the Human Services Commission.
Just a sec, Brent. Thanks. I've been back to Washington, D.C. on a number of occasions, speaking on behalf of the homeless, specifically with the VA. And one of the issues that the VA has, I have asked them if they would increase the value of the VASH vouchers, the Veterans Administration Supportive Housing Vouchers. During the Obama administration, 78,000 vouchers were issued to take veterans off the streets. There were over 150,000 homeless veterans in the country. Over 78,000 have been taken off the streets because of the VASH vouchers. When I've gone back to Washington, D.C., I have asked that they increase the value of the vouchers because many people are not willing to lose $1,000 a month by using a VASH voucher because, as I have explained to the VA, this is some of the most expensive real estate on the planet. And they have not increased the value of those vouchers to meet the needs required by many of the properties that are for rent. We have been able to find some outside of this area, but there are veterans that do not want to move outside of the area. We live in a great place. But one of the problems is to find landlords that are willing to lose money every single month. It's a commitment to our veterans, but some are not willing to take a personal economic loss. And I believe the federal government should step up and make these landlords whole so that we can serve these people that have served our country. I was at a military homecoming yesterday, honoring a young man that had just come back from his military service. Our community turned out to support him. We need the federal government to support our veterans as well. So thank you. I appreciate your comments. Mr. Seiler.
This is a very good intro for me. Following up with Mr. Scott, I've spent over 2 years now doing my own outreach to people who are unsheltered. One thing happened over the weekend. There was 2 gentlemen up by Safeway, had a litter of puppies. Of course, I do dog rescue, so of course I pulled over and spoke to them. Long story short, they wanted a hand up, not a handout. And someone offered them to do work. They contacted me at 8:30 in the morning. Said, "Can I borrow your lawnmower? Can I borrow weed eaters? Can I get some hedge clippers?" I gathered everything up, met them over there at noon, and for 2 days they worked. Weeds were probably high as this podium. They cleared that person's yard. And I know I've heard my council make comments about there's not much more we can do, and I think we can with getting other organizations on board and getting the council to help support these efforts. One thing that's been ringing in my head is unsheltered helpers. I look on Nextdoor, Rant and Raves, other places, people are always asking for help. And there's people out there willing to do the work. We have no way of connecting those people who are unsheltered to the people who want the help to clean a yard, pull weeds, walk a dog, whatever it is. So if anyone is watching TV 30 or is here tonight and we can pull a program together that can take these unsheltered people and help the community with things that can be done, that's a hand up, not a handout. So You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rant and Raves, you name it, next door, I'm there. The other thing that Mr. Scott brought up was, and this was spoken about with the council's last meeting, is housing. And I strongly urge the council to think differently about housing. I know there is a perception of how the council wants housing to be done in Livermore. But I'm working with investors now to try to buy the property down at Walmart. And for me to get it, I would have to have zoning redone down there to come up with micro units where people can live. We're going to see if we can get the funding. If we can, I'll be coming back and asking, what will it take city staff to work with me and other investors to get that land so we can turn it into micro housing as a pet project, so we can see if it works or if it doesn't work. If it works, I would strongly urge the council then to look at other ways to provide housing that may not be traditional, but it can be done. Thank you.
And thank you for bringing up the bringing people's needs to people that can help out. There is a website called justserve.org, and this works very closely with CityServe. But what it is, it's people can go online and register a project. So say next Saturday, there is a retired couple that needs weeding done around their house. About 4 hours worth of work. You can register that project on Nextdoor, and then people can hook up and then volunteer for that project. So it's a great way of taking the needs of some and matching it with the strengths of others and bringing the community together. So it's called justserve.org, free website, and it's to link people together to get exactly the things like you're talking about done. People that need a hand up and not a handout. So justserve.org and CityServe in the Tri-Valleys. Those are both great organizations to reach out, help, and to volunteer. So thank you for that. Jim Goff, Moni Knopp, and John Stein.
Good evening. My comments are a little bit more narrow. I'm more or less here tonight because I wanted to make you aware and also ask Public Works if they're here tonight. I'm not sure if there is somebody representing Public Works or not. Yes?
They're here.
Okay. I was here about a year ago, and I mentioned a very dangerous intersection that we have talked about before, Patterson and Greenville. And it was brought to my attention at that time that the city was waiting on the county. So then I've been to multiple county meetings where they say it's the city. And I said this last time. So my question right now would be to Public Works, if there's any updates on a light in that area, if you know of any. And if there is not, as of right now, if you've got my email address, if there's something I can do as far as community service to help push this along. I personally had 2 people, including myself, hit there, and it's just, you can ask your own police force. It's a bad intersection. So between the county and the city, I'm just not sure who's going to put the light in.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, could I get a comment from
Yeah,
Public Works if they're here?
Anybody take, Sherry Sheets, our city engineer. Yeah, we got some information that it's a while back. But,
Yeah, it's been
provide
a
an
bit of
update.
a while. So that project is going out to bid in the next month.
Okay.
It'll be a couple months to get bids in, but then it'll be awarded and should be under construction in the next couple months.
That's great. That's
Soon
what I
enough
wanted to
for you?
hear. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you for bringing it to our
Hopefully I don't
attention.
come back in a year.
No, you'll be going through the light now. Thank you. We have Moni Knopp and John Stein. Mr. Knopp.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Moni Knopp, a resident at 1926 Railroad Avenue, number 102, and a business owner with Moni Knopp Real Estate in downtown Livermore. My business likes giving back to the community in many ways throughout the year, from our Teacher of the Month program at Joe Mitchell School to providing a scholarship to community college students in partnership with the Pedrosi Scholarship Foundation, to collecting turkeys, gift cards, and cash for the Tri-Valley Haven via our annual event called the Moninop Turkey Drop. I'm here today to inform you that my business has partnered with the nonprofit organization Kids Against Hunger to provide an opportunity for people to join my team and I in giving back to our community. So on Saturday, April 27th, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., we're hosting a community food packing event at the Bothwell Center. I'm here to invite all of you and members of the general public to help support this upcoming community event. Our goal is to gather a minimum of 100 members of my personal friends and the general public, and hopefully a few of you, so we could pack about 10,000 nutritious meals to be distributed to impoverished countries around the world. Now, this event is near and dear to my heart because when I grew up during the killing fields of Cambodia, by living in a small shack on forced stilt with no running water and a grass roof hut, and while living in multiple refugee camps in Thailand and the Philippines, I always had to go to bed hungry every night. At times, I was literally in severe stomach pain because I had nothing to eat. By hosting this event, I hoped to help prevent other children from around the world from going to bed hungry, just like I did. I ask that all of you and members of the public to consider supporting me in this community event. I know it will be fun and a perfect opportunity to meet some of your neighbors and friends too. We sent out 1,400 postcards to the downtown community neighborhood already. You can find information about our event via Eventbrite. Look for Moni's Feed the Need. Call me at 925-575-1602 or email me at moni@moninop.com. I hope to see many of you there, and I thank you for your time and kind consideration, and thank you for doing such a great job for our community. We truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Knopp, and thank you for your service to our community. And finally, John Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. At the last meeting, one of the legislative goals of the city was to support the peripheral tunnels. That's 2 large tunnels that would intercept the Sacramento River 35 miles upstream from Clifton Forebay and bypass the Delta. This would result in higher quality water in the summer and perhaps a more reliable supply, at least in the short term. There are some negatives. It would also remove the only physical barrier to essentially diverting almost all of the Sacramento River during dry summers from the Delta. This would affect Delta farmers, recreation, and perhaps most important, the various fish populations. In 2017, both the Central Water Project and the state project diverted much of the water from the Sacramento River beyond what was set by law. They overrode that. And in 2017, the salmon run was 1,100 salmon. This compares with about 120,000 in 1969, and before New Melones Dam and the Shasta Dam, probably a couple of million. There are also other threatened populations: steelhead, sturgeon, shad. And the other problem is that the major financing from this will come from Los Angeles Light and Water and the West Side farmers, who will then have perhaps a stronger tie to requiring flows from the Sacramento River. We've seen what's happened to the San Joaquin. About 60 miles of it goes dry, and the rest is essentially so polluted by agricultural runoff that nothing can live in it. So I would urge that you perhaps in the long term look at the impacts of the 2 40-foot diameter tunnels and perhaps reconsider. Thank you.
Mr. Stein, thank you. Okay, with that, that's the end of the Citizens Forum. Moving on to the consent calendar. These are items typically of a routine nature. They're usually voted on in a single motion. Does anybody wish to pull any of the items for comment? Any cards? No? Okay. Do I have a motion for the consent calendar? Moved by Councilmember Warner. Seconded by Vice Mayor Carling. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Moving on to, we have no public hearings, so moving on to matters for consideration. Discussion and direction regarding the Holmes Street Wall Abatement Program. Yay. This is something I've been working on for years in the Holmes Street Wall Replacement Program. So certainly very happy to see this coming to the council. We have Sherry Sheets, our city engineer, and Doug Martin, our neighborhood preservation manager.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Sherry Sheets, your city engineer, and this is Doug Martin, your neighborhood preservation manager. Staff is proposing the council approve a facilitated program to help abate nuisances and replace the existing Home Street decorative wall between Hampton Court and Concan Avenue. In 2014, the decorative wall along Home Street, which was neither designed nor constructed to be a retaining wall, began to experience failures. There were numerous conditions that contributed to that failure, including private property activities such as added wall loadings associated with either failed private retaining walls, soil surcharge where people had dug pools and offloaded the surcharge down the hill, as well as structural loadings where they attached sheds or other facilities to the wall. And also including trees that the roots and the limbs both affected the wall, and in addition to that, some drainage obstructions from behind the wall, which added to the hydrostatic pressure building up behind the wall. Back when, in 2014, the city hired a consultant who did an initial conditions assessment. And what they determined is that each property had its own unique situation with varying levels of impact. The city closed the sidewalk due to the potential hazards associated with the failing walls. And then the city notified the property owners of the situation and requested that they take corrective actions to remedy the private activities. A new wall can't be constructed until the private actions are taken. The city has continued to notify the property owners on an annual basis of the situation and the need for remedy. At this time, Council is proposing that we accelerate the process through an incentivized abatement and replacement program. The city will provide personalized assessment for each property. At your last council meeting, you authorized Kieran Wright to go out and look at each individual property and identify the corrective measures needed for each of them. We will also provide engineering support activities, including identifying the types of corrective measures and the typical retaining walls that they may need, depending on what their individual property needs are. The city will offer financial assistance in the form of long-term loans backed by judgment liens for property owners in need. And it will also facilitate access for private property repairs by offering free encroachment permits and coordinating wall removal with their private property activity. The program does include a procedure allowing the city to abate if the property owners fail to do so. The city will replace the decorative wall with a continuous wooden fence and will restore landscaping along the corridor. The project will be done in 3 phases, with the first phase from Hampton Court to the Brewers property being completed between January and June of 2020, depending on how much of the private repairs the city has to take on to abate. The second phase will be completed between June and November of 2020, and the third phase is expected to follow 3 months later. The final wall placement on the property line and the use of wooden fence materials will enhance the homeowner's ability to maintain the new fence.
There are currently 21 property owners affected by this program. The city has sent written notifications with a fact sheet attached describing the program and informing them of tonight's council meeting. The city then met with 15 of the 21 property owners in the field. We have follow-up appointments scheduled, and we have made phone calls to the remaining few. To date, the property owners have been very cooperative with our efforts.
Staff is therefore recommending that the council adopt a resolution this evening approving a Home Street Wall incentivized abatement program, including appropriating $650,000 to finance the private property corrective measures and to abate the public nuisances for residents needing financial assistance. We also ask that you approve the Home Street Wall replacement program, which includes replacement of the decorative block wall with an 8-foot solid wood fence, and appropriating $1.1 million in funds for the design and construction of that new replacement fence. That ends our presentation, and staff's available for comments.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, very good. I have two cards, Judy Haywood and John Stein.
I see a few of my neighbors are here. By the way, thank you very much for letting me speak. My house was the second one on the bottom that she just displayed. Could you put that back up?
Is that
First one, second page, second house. I'm right here with the cones.
Right.
That wall that you're looking at right there, a truck drove into it and hit one of your magnolia trees and then proceeded to hit our wall. Most of that damage is on my neighbor's property, but it's affected my property. I have very few stress marks on my wall, which I bought 11 years ago. My husband and I are both retired. And now I've been told this is not a retaining wall, but a decorative wall. As far as I was concerned when I bought that house, it was well maintained. It's a beautiful backyard. I have 80 cypress trees. I have been told that I may have to take out some of my 80 beautiful that are at least 20 foot tall, that keeps out the noise, and it gives us a little bit of privacy because the light is right there at that corner. And if a fire truck comes, believe me, you can hear it when it comes down Concannon. The homes that have been on Holmes Street, they've been in a mess for some time. I'm glad you're working on that. However, when the city allowed the builder to build those places and have all that dirt, I don't understand why it happened. I know it's not your fault. It's long before your time, but it's also long before my time. And what I'm getting out of all this, okay, we're going to put up a nice big 8-foot fence for you, but guess what? You're going to have to put up a retaining wall, which I am not in need of right now. I mean, it may last another 100 years. I don't think anybody really knows. And my trees aren't the ones that are uprooting your sidewalk. It's your trees. I have 3 redwood trees right on the corner. And I've been fighting with the city, and they did last year. They came and trimmed their redwood trees. And so I really feel this is going to put a hardship on my husband and I. We just refinanced our house, and now, according to this paperwork, I'm going to have a lien on my property if I don't do it. And my husband's 83, and I will be 80. I don't think this is right. I don't think any of you would like this to happen on your property. So anything anybody can do to see what they can do, I haven't been told for sure that I even need a retaining wall. Nobody has really said, because nobody really knows. But I'm going to fight for those trees. I bought that house because of those trees. It's beautiful, and you're all welcome to come. We'll have a big barbecue. But my neighbor, Matt, who's right here, he was there from day one when the project started. He knows everything about the property, and he's in the same position we are. He's right next door to me. He just put up, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, cypress trees. And now he has cypress trees, and now they're endangered. So the arborists in here ought to come to our aid. That's really all I have to say, but it's going to be a real hardship on me. It's 1349 Evans Place. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm not looking for a loan. I really don't want a loan, but I would like for somebody to come up with something that would be feasible for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haywood. And Mr. Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I agree it's past time to do something, and I second your yay. But some history. Most of Holmes Street has wooden fencing. It's mostly 6 foot. Some of it is 8 foot. Some of it has been modified. It started out as grape stake fencing about 45 years ago, and has probably been replaced 2 or 3 times. You've spent a lot of time on asset management, and I urge you to look at the life cycle cost of wooden fencing versus masonry. There's some very innovative masonry fencing with precast panels and piers. Also, the design, as I see the illustration, shows a separate retaining wall behind the fence. In some cases 3 or 4 feet high, and then a gap between that retaining wall and the fence, wooden or whatever. And access will be difficult. Things tend to go downhill, whether it's leaves or branches or dirt, and it'll be very difficult to maintain the backside of the fence. So I would urge that you at least look at an integral sound wall masonry fence rather than a precast concrete or a cast-in-place concrete retaining wall and a separate fence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Okay, with that, this is the last of the cards that I have. I'll bring it back to the council. Any comments from the council? Vice Mayor Carling?
So Mr. Stein brings up a good point. What's the answer?
Are you speaking specifically?
Space between the, I mean,
Right.
some retaining walls are going to be pretty short. It'd be easy to clean between the fence and the retaining wall, but others will be pretty tall, right?
Yes, some of them could be 3 to 4 feet tall. And the city, as we're going through with our consultant, we're identifying those where either the retaining wall needs to have a greater separation or where we can integrate the wooden fence with the retaining wall. So as we go through each individual property, we'll be coming back with a proposal for, not back to you, but to the property owners with a proposal for each of those properties.
And you've looked at a masonry versus a wooden fence, right?
Correct, and basically the life cycle costs, given the wooden fence that we're proposing, which is a pretty beefy wooden fence, the life cycle analysis shows that it's about equal with the masonry wall.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? I've actually, I drive that several times a day as the staff recognizes, because I am constantly reminding them of it. But to Ms. Haywood's point about how the wall's looking fine and it's going to last for another 100 years, as you're sitting at the light on Holmes going north and you look at the wall, you can actually see where the wall is bowing out, and it is cracked on both sides. So it's bowing out. There's not a lot of elasticity behind an unreinforced masonry wall. So I think it's scary. No, that's a please. No, thank you. And yeah, it amazes me how people can't make that turn and how they hit the wall. But that was a decorative wall. And there were people that dug their pools and illegally piled up 2 to 4 feet of dirt up against our wall and damaged the city's wall. There are other instances where somebody wanted a drain line, and you can see that. So they took a sledgehammer and pounded a hole through the wall to create a drain line. So this wall has been severely abused for many, many years. And we're trying to find a way to mitigate both a public safety hazard and an aesthetic hazard as well. So this was the best way we got a consultant come in here. It's going to individually look at every single property and then find a way that we'll make this work. And yeah, it's going to be expensive, but this has been 50 years in the making. There were some bad decisions made long before any of us got up here on the council, and we have to take these bad decisions. We've got to find a way to solve this and to make it work. And we've got a long stretch that we have to replace. And we've got a consultant coming in that's going to give us the best recommendations. I assure you that our city staff will be working with all of the residents and all the homeowners there to make sure that this is a good project. So we'll continue to work on this, and this is something that I have been trying to get done for 7 years. And we came to the community, to the neighborhood years ago, and said, "Hey, we'd like to work with you on this. And could you know, take some proactive efforts here?" And we have not been successful. So that's what has precipitated this. Is now we have to go up and do something. So we're moving ahead. We're getting this done. And this is something that we've been trying to get done for years. And we're finally going to do this. So I'm really looking forward to it. Councilmember Monroe.
I am just curious about the situation with the cypress trees. You know, what trees? Yes, no. What?
There are a couple of properties that have groves of cypress trees along them. It may be possible to do a specialized, like, soil nailed wall to retain the landscaping the way it is. Again, that's something that we're having our consultant take a look at. That may be a more expensive option than taking down some of the cypress trees. So we'll have the options available for folks to choose from.
So when the cypress trees were planted, you know, way back when, was dirt added to a decorative wall, or?
Yes.
So that the wall currently does not support.
Correct.
What it's supposed. So the cypress trees really shouldn't be where they were located, even though that happened well before. Ms. Haywood.
There's about a 4-foot surcharge
Yeah.
against the wall. And a surcharge is a pile of dirt, by the way. It took me a while to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Vice Mayor?
So what happens to the trees that are on the street side of the wall?
So many of the trees, there's kind of two different areas for trees. Right. We will be replacing and replanting trees. All of them will be on the street side. No longer will they be up adjacent to the actual fence, decorative fence. We will be putting landscape in there. Some kind of form of hedge material will be placed adjacent to the fence itself.
So the current wall, decorative wall, is zigzags. What happens with the new one?
We are placing it directly on the property line, so it will be straight. We'll no longer have the zigzags.
But there'll still be opportunity for some landscaping on the street side of the fence. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
There will be about 2.5 foot of space.
Okay. Thanks.
It will be running water down that line, so there'll be irrigation.
Yes, we'll be irrigating all along there. Mm-hmm.
Great. Councilmember Warner.
Yeah, so that's where I was going at earlier conversations with staff. I wanted to make sure that there was irrigation and landscaping, because in my own opinion, I don't think any of these so-called decorative walls are decorative, any that we have anywhere in town, and the only good ones are those that are landscaped so you can't see them, for the most part. So I think the key here is to understand that the retaining wall is the property owner's responsibility, that the city will put in this fence in the meantime, but I think the ultimate thing is just have the right landscaping, and so the fence won't be a graffiti magnet, and eventually it doesn't matter what it looks like. That's where I'm coming from. So I think it's making sure that we have the right landscaping is very good. And the thing that I noticed is that on the Wente Vineyards on Tesla Road, they put up a big stucco wall, and within very short order, you don't see it. You see all just the vines and everything on it. So that's what I think. I want to make absolutely sure that we, that we make it actually look good. And a wooden fence is not particularly attractive.
There's actually a graffiti abatement product. They're artificial vines, and you attach the artificial vines to the wall or the fence, and it looks like.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. More stuff out there. Okay, Councilmember Monroe.
This is Livermore. We don't need artificial vines.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, do you have a motion? Well, heck, I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, the mayor moved it. The second by Councilmember Monroe. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll continue to work with you. Okay, 6.02. This is on the 2019 Innovation and Economic Development Strategic Plan. We have Adam Van de Water, one of our newest directors here. There's a fascinating history on the 1996 strategic plan. That was very interesting.
I see you did your homework, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Marchand, council members. I'm Adam Van de Water, your new Director of Innovation and Economic Development. I just finished my 3rd month, so I'm here to report to you for the first time and get your feedback on our general direction as we put together an economic development strategic plan for the city. I'm joined today by my colleagues Brandon Cardwell and Teresa de la Vega from the department, who put together large parts of the presentation this evening. We just have 197 slides of detailed econometric analysis to present. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the previous version. But if we could get right into it, I'll give you a quick overview of where we're heading. As you may have seen in the packet, it's been some time since the city's done a complete strategic plan for economic development, so we're going to put together a process and timeline for updating that information, give you a quick snapshot of where we are as a city from an economic perspective, focusing on 3 areas going forward: long-term financial sustainability, your council-directed priority of encouraging an innovation-driven economy, enhancing our already enviable quality of life, and then specific next steps. So this is the first of 3 phases as we've conceived this. The first is sort of reviewing our literature and history to date, going back to the last strategic plan that was completed in July of 1996. It was a year-long effort with a 22-member task force as part of the Vision 2000 process. There were several white papers completed for that, and a number of goals and priorities, which you see in your packet there, and we will be using as preliminary guidance. We then included economic development and a fiscal element as an option in our general plan in the 2000s. And then during a relatively tumultuous economic period in the late 2000s, when we dissolved redevelopment and had a number of changes, including the creation of our iGate Innovation Hub, we reported back to you on the beginnings of a secondary strategic planning effort. So going forward, what I would like to do tonight is to give you a brief overview of some of the narrative storylines we're seeing in the data, and then outline the next 2 phases, which include going out and talking to the community and to the key stakeholders throughout the course of the summer. And we'll talk through a little bit of how we plan to do that, and then to come back to you in the fall with a strategic plan that marries some of that economic data with some of that more qualitative conversation into a series of work plans and specific deliverables for your consideration. So in terms of the economic snapshot, generally everything is trending in the right direction. Our trends are looking very strong. Over the last 8 years, we've focused here on the post-expansion period after the last recession that occurred in the 2007 to the 2010 period. We've added about 1,000 people per year and about a similar number of jobs. It's important to note that not every person here is job age eligible. We also have those outside of the traditional 18 to 64-year-old work environment. So we've really added about 1.8 jobs for every work-eligible new resident here in Livermore, but generally they're keeping good pace. Our unemployment rate, like most of the Bay Area, is near historic lows. Most economists would tell you this is full employment. You'll never get to zero. There's always going to be a sector of the voluntarily unemployed, but we're down to 2.4% unemployment right now from a peak of 7.6 in 2010. A general trend we like to see in the downward direction, and that has increased our overall median household income about 16% from 2010 when we were around $94,000 per household to 2018 when we're about 109. Important to note that this is not absolute creation of wealth, that there is inflation here. When you look at just the CPI per the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that accounts for about 14 of those 16% increase. So we're increasing our household income, but only nominally above the cost of goods. So we're doing well, but not as well as some parts of the region. In terms of city revenues, when we look at that in terms of our property tax and sales and use tax and other tax receipts, we've done very well. I'll draw your attention here to that period between 2007 and 2010 when we experienced the downturn. You'll see that in the downward dip there. And we've, since that low point, increased city revenues almost 50%, which is a real sign of strength in our economy. And you'll see during that down period in 2007, 2010, the one line in the lower part there that was impacted the most is sales and use taxes. So that's important when we think about discretionary spending and you think about your personal experience. When times are tough, you're less likely to add on to your house or go shopping, do discretionary actions outside of paying everyday and monthly obligations. And so those take a disproportionate hit, and we'll come back to that in a minute. When you look at the top industries by jobs, our predominant employers, research and development, local government, have stayed very stable, as you'd expect. And we've seen increases in almost every other sector of the economy here between 2010 and 2018. And that's that 1.8 jobs per household that we've been creating over the last 9 years. Finally, when we think of economic development, we don't like to think purely in numbers. If we create jobs and we have great tax receipts, what does that mean for our quality of life? What does that mean for our experience as residents in Livermore? And as you'll hear later this evening in the National Community Survey, there is a very positive and strong response to residents surveying of their quality of life. We have a thriving viticulture and brewery industry. We have a lot of great outdoor events, options for dining and retail, and of course, changes to infrastructure and growth going forward. However, there are some challenges going ahead. You heard earlier this evening some of the comments about the cost of housing. And on the left here, we show the median home price and how dramatically that has increased over time. Between 2012 and today, it's more than doubled in total value in terms of median home price, which is putting a real squeeze on those that are housing insecure. If you didn't own your home before that time, getting into that market is very, very difficult to do. Also, when you compare household income to our neighbors throughout the Tri-Valley, our household income, as I mentioned, has increased and has outpaced inflation, nominally so, but not at an increasing rate as steep as some of our neighbors in Pleasanton, Dublin, and San Ramon, which have a little different product mix in terms of their commercial and job opportunities, which we'll show here in a second. And then there's the big wild card, the predominance of news of, are we at the end of our expansionary period? This is kind of a blend of art and science, and nobody can accurately tell you exactly what's going to happen next. But this July will mark the longest post-war expansionary period in American history. We could go the way of Australia and have 28 years of economic expansion, or we could be at the end of an expansionary period. It seems the predominance of evidence in the press and among economists is that the latter is more likely. And some economists, including the director of real estate at the Fisher Center at UC Berkeley, have gone so far as to project the likelihood of a relatively soft and short-term recession Bay Area-wide of about 60% by the end of next year and about 80% by the end of 2021. So we think that there is some volatility coming our way that could threaten some of these positive trends, and want to start asking and answering the question of what we can do to better prepare ourselves and be resilient to that coming change. So when we think of how to summarize some of this data and give it a little bit of structure, we're really focused on three primary focus areas. The first is long-term financial sustainability. And by that, we really mean two things. On the public side, that's ensuring that our revenue sources are sufficient to provide for core city services and investing in our community, that we can continue to have strong schools and public safety and open space and maintenance of our infrastructure. And on the private side, it's making sure that the mix of jobs and industries that contribute to a robust local economy are still there, that we're not over-concentrated in any one industry, that we're not at a point where we're threatening high-wage, low-wage, mid-wage, certain sectors that could be vulnerable going forward. So when we look at resiliency through diversification, one thing that stuck out to us when we look at our top sales tax generators, 17 of the 50 top sales tax generators in Livermore are concentrated in the construction and discretionary retail industries. And these are the types of sectors of the economy that are adversely impacted by a downturn in the economy. So if you believe those economists who project we will be seeing a softening of the economy in the next year or two, then we should be worried about our concentration here, because in that period, then we'll have less of that type of activity, and what will that do for our employment and our economy? So while I think that one of the primary takeaways here this evening is generally we are in a very strong position, and most of what I will be discussing tonight is either preparing for a change in the future or really nibbling around the edges. But it's really, that old proverb, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. We want to make sure we're planning for what we think is coming in the near term. One of our focus areas we'll get into here in a second is a focus on high-wage, high-revenue industries, and this is not to the exclusion of low-wage, low-revenue or other sectors, but really identifying this as a growth opportunity for the city, as a way to get more employment and more revenues for the city. Which leads me to our second focus area on an innovation-driven economy. So earlier this spring, the council adopted encouraging an innovation-driven economy as one of the 5 priorities for the city, and we've been spending some time defining that a little bit into creating a place where innovative companies thrive. And we think of that in terms of our relative assets, both within the Tri-Valley and within the Bay Area, and see those as threefold. First of all, the majority of our commercial space, nearly 3/4 of all of the commercial space in the city of Livermore, is industrial. This is the lion's share of industrial space throughout the entire Tri-Valley. So if you look here, the 3 pie charts, Livermore shown in blue in each, 68% of the industrial in the entire Tri-Valley is here in Livermore, only 9% of the office space, and 32% of the retail. So if you are a corporate headquarters or seeking a Class A office type of environment today, you tend to locate in Bishop Ranch, Hacienda Business Park, and places in San Ramon and Pleasanton. Will that always be true? We don't think so, but it is today. And retail, thanks to our thriving downtown and our largest outdoor outlet mall in California, is we have 32% of the retail in the Tri-Valley. So that's a strong sector, but one that is untested since the creation of the outlets in an economic downturn scenario. So how do we prepare for that? Our second asset, as we see it, is the intersection of 2 high-value talent pools. I come most recently from San Francisco, which has a predominance of software, financial services, a lot of white-collar office work. which is not necessarily appropriate here. What we see, given that industrial footprint, is a real opportunity where high talent innovation meets high talent fabrication, and you see that in a number of our businesses, from Gillig to Topcon to Form Factor to the labs to a number of businesses that have both of those elements in an industrial or office setting. And that's an asset that you don't see as easily combined to our east or to our west. Our third relative asset is our proximity to those unique Bay Area resources. We are on the eastern edge of the 9-county Bay Area and physically adjacent to Bay Area customers, expertise, and capital. This image here focuses on one element of that, which is the venture capital investment in the Tri-Valley over the last decade, totaling over $4 billion. So the services that go with that, the customers that go with that, and the expertise that go with that is right here in our backyard. So when you combine the three in this lovely Venn diagram, you have the innovation talent pool, that fabrication talent pool in those large industrial facilities. And sitting right there in the middle are our resident laboratories, Lawrence Livermore and Sandia, Lamb Research, Topcon, Form Factor, Kinetics, Gillig, others that we think are our relative competitive advantage and are an opportunity to invest in terms of creating an innovation-driven economy going forward. And when you look at our businesses, and this is a stat out of one of our economic modeling contracts, MC Research, you see professional, scientific, and technical services there at the top, the second bar outlined in green, and manufacturing. These are categories of their design, so there is some overlap here. But you also see the construction, retail, government, healthcare there. We think we are very strong in some of these advanced manufacturing type positions, and within those categories have additional opportunities in biotechnology, life sciences, ag innovation, and other things that kind of fit within those three Venn diagrams, and have the added benefit and output of a high quality job, efficient use of land use, and generator of sales tax revenue and business tax revenue. The last area of emphasis we're looking at, we've generally called quality of life. And by that, we're thinking not just the traditional public safety, good schools, access to open space, but from an economic development lens, access to a diversity of employment and housing options. This is both different types of jobs and different types of housing, but also different access points to them, size, accessibility, cost, pay scale, et cetera, that pay wages commensurate with cost of living. And that can mean different things to different populations. That can mean a wage to purchase a single family home or an attached townhome. That can also mean a wage to put you through school if you're housing secure and you're living with family. So it means a number of different entry points. We also mean an experience-rich environment for residents and visitors. This is your festivals, this is your sense of place, this is your quality of life and your living environment. And then that distinctive character that goes with it that both benefits the local residents and acts as an attractant to new business. This is kind of a little more to that point. To remain a balanced and inclusive community, we need multiple entry points to the job and housing market. And you hear refrains of this throughout a number of items before the council about the struggling access to housing and that cost and prohibitiveness there, and then how we can continue to get people into the jobs that match their skill sets. When we look at quality of life, we're also thinking about time outside of the office, and that's impacted by how long it takes you to get to and from the office. So this is a graph by annual salary across the x-axis and inbound and outbound commuters across the y-axis, such that anything above the The kind of heavily dotted line in the middle are those who are coming inbound to Livermore to work in Livermore but are not resident to Livermore, and those that are below the line are the reverse. Those are those who live in Livermore and work outside of Livermore. Generally, you see it's relatively distributed across different annual salaries and with a few dots above and below across different points. But what we're pointing out here is that on the lower wage, we have a number of inbound commuters, and each of these are not single-person dots. The highest dot on the top left there is over 800 employees in the about $30,000 annual salary range commuting into Livermore. These are landscape workers, retail, restaurant-type workers, personal service who are coming in from elsewhere to our community. And on the other scale, we have 500 or so, around 110, 20, 30,000 that are commuting out. And these are software engineers, IT systems analysts who are going presumably to the west, to Silicon Valley, San Francisco, East Bay, for those type of employment opportunities. And are there things that we can do to kind of even out those edges, recognizing that the majority here are sort of concentrated around the line you'd expect them to be. And then finally, the remainder of that distinctive sense of place is having the time to volunteer, having the time to go to a kid's a practice or game, to be a part of the community in a non-professional way, an unpaid way, and to experience the amenity-rich environment that we're looking to create, from the arts to innovation to children's activities and other things that make Livermore the place to live that we all cherish and that we see in the National Community Survey you'll hear about later is something that people really value. So in terms of next steps, I wanted to just give you this brief overview of where we see the data, invite your feedback, particularly around two questions as we kind of wrap up what we've been doing for my first 3 months here with you. Looking through the data and begin to engage the broader community and the stakeholders in a sense of, does this resonate? Is this where we want to be? Are there concerns here? And start developing that into a specific set of work plan and action items. And then to return to you in the fall with a strategic plan that marries the two, that says if this is where the data says we are and this is where we want to be, if they are not the same point, what work plan bridges that gap to bring them together to get us to our collective vision for the future. So my specific questions to you this evening are any other data you'd like to see, any other questions you particularly have on what we've presented this evening, and then have we identified the right set of stakeholders? And we list a few of them here, from traditional business groups like the Chamber of Commerce, the downtown, our Wine Growers Association, Visit Tri-Valley, Innovation Tri-Valley, to our entrepreneurs at the Switch, our creative industries and independent retailers, our large employers, the two laboratories, Gillet, Glam, Topcon, Form Factor, Simon outlets, our real estate community. They're working as brokers and developers and hospitality on behalf of other sectors of the business. And then, of course, our neighborhood and community groups. And we'd like to invite the community at large to email us at any time with their ideas. We've put our email address here, oied@cityoflivermore.net. That goes both to myself as well as to Brandon and Teresa. And we invite that feedback. We'd also, we're looking for opportunities to come to where the public is already assembled, farmers markets or the downtown street fair in May. And other ways where people can take a brief moment out of their busy lives and let us know if this is the right direction, what they'd like to see. The quarterly newsletter the city is putting out will go out to mailboxes shortly, where we've asked two very simple questions. If you could have one thing from an economic development perspective, what would it be and why? And when you crow about Livermore to your friends and neighbors outside of town, what do you tell them you love? And use those as proxies to figure out what it is we cherish, what it is we feel like we're missing, and then feed that into our work planning process so we can come back to you with a specific set of action plans. So with that brief overview, I invite your feedback or your questions, and we'll do our best to answer, recognizing that we still have our work cut out for us to come back to you with a cohesive vision by this coming fall.
Great. Very good. Thank you very much. Questions? Question? Councilmember Warner.
Just a couple. Go back to the one slide you got there on the innovation-driven economy, and you got the industrial space, office space, and then you think about your last list here of the identify the right stakeholders, and what you have here under large employers are the ones that are currently here. But am I to infer from this, since we don't have a lot of the office space, and that's where the software people are, that we're not thinking that we have a chance there anymore?
I think what we're trying to do here is create something that is of and from Livermore. Or some people use the concept of economic gardening, of kind of seeding and growing what we have and what we intend to have. I believe that statement would be true today. I think if, depending on items later on the council, if we have a connected rail system with a cross-platform transfer at Dublin Pleasanton, and we have a multimodal station at Isabelle, we very well could have that type of product mix that we don't have today. We have not built much of any, if any, office in the last 12 years, to my knowledge, here in town. That office tends to go where there is the most accessible access to talent, and today that is the 680 corridor and the BART station adjacent areas. Valley Link could be the game changer in that, because it would provide a transit connective stop all the way into San Francisco.
So what you're saying is that that if any place we were to put the Class A office space, it would be at the Isabelle area. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that would be the most attractive from a leasing perspective, because it would provide the most access to a wider talent pool, both to the west and to the east. It's probably not the only. I know there are others that are looking for expansion opportunities. We only have about a 3% vacancy rate in our industrial area. And we're going to have to ask ourselves what we want to do about that going forward. In terms of office, there aren't that many places that are better suited than Isabelle, but it's not necessarily the only location in town.
So going back to the other thing about have you identified the right stakeholders, how do you think about that group that you would like to attract here but aren't here yet? I mean, how do you include them in this conversation?
So I like to think in terms of foundational elements that we could create to attract the parties that we're interested in. First, there's what we have on the ground today, and how do we best leverage the existing assets, which is of lowest cost and best return. And then the second is, if there is a target market that we would like to attract, what would we need in place to attract that target audience? And for example, as the new person in town, I look around at the accommodations. We have a lot of hotels that are sort of convenience hotels along 580. We don't have a lot of tourism-serving hotels in or near our wine country. If we wanted to market our wine country as a destination to support our tasting rooms and our vineyards, it would be beneficial to have a hotel on the south side of town. Similarly, the hotel that's planned downtown could support downtown as well. Isabelle is another opportunity where if we brought transit and the correct zoning, we could attract a different product mix that we haven't as a community historically had.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Warner?
So I'm a little confused. You can help me with a couple of questions I have about your slides. So on the post-recovery economic snapshot, you have top industries by jobs. Yeah, I know. He wrote the same thing. So the far left, is that are those the labs?
So this is a category in MC. So the labs, as we all know, is more than 3,500 employees. Right. But I believe they would be categorized in a number of these categories. The lab has science, it has IT, it has project management, it has other employees, and I don't know if
so you broke it out.
Want to add to that, but there are almost 10,000 employees at the lab, and this is showing 3,500 of them in a subset of those.
Okay,
yes.
All right. Did you have a follow-on to that? Oh, who's the local? Local government, yeah, what's that?
I was going to ask the same one, yeah.
Yeah, so that's showing about 2,500.
There's only 5 of us.
We only have about 400 of them.
452.
But that'll include the school district, the county, the state, others that are in the area. The other challenge in some of this data is depending on your data source. Some of it is linked directly to the county. Some of it is linked to zip code. Some of it is linked to an approximation of the city by area. So some of these have to be taken with a little bit of grain of salt if you get into a very fine grain view of it, which is why I think we're trying to present what we see as the general narrative rather than the absolute.
Later on, you have one on innovation-driven economy where you've got some bars going to the right. What are the numbers down? Yeah, that one. What are the numbers down at the bottom? 2,000, 4,000, 6,000?
These are number of jobs.
We have
and
almost
there's
8,000 construction jobs? 7,000 construction jobs?
Correct. So that's in the construction-related field. So that's not necessarily a carpenter or a plumber, but it could also include a business that is in the construction field. It might include, and I don't know it at this level of detail, like somebody who works at Home Depot or Ace Hardware or something like it, if it's generally attributable to construction.
And then, what you're thinking about working with the national labs? Have you given much thought to that?
I've toured both labs and have had extensive conversations with them. They are growing rather quickly, and their business model has changed over time. And I wouldn't begin to explain this to someone of your background and experience, but they tell me that they are going to they will need to update some of their facilities, that in order to attract the best and the brightest, they need facilities that are worthy of the best and the brightest. And there are limitations in the federal funding and appropriation process for them to do that quickly, given the fluctuations that they experience from a hiring perspective. Mm-hmm. So we're investigating creative options for them to do that. And they're, some of that is near term, and some of it is going to be a longer term discussion with them as they roll open the open campus and kind of look to their future many years out. But very much one of the biggest employers in town and a very important piece of this conversation.
Right. I mean, one of the things that always I thought was a challenge was the number of foreign nationals that we hired. I mean, it's not hundreds, it was in dozens, right, between the two labs, and how we integrate those people into a community. Because many of those people, and this speaks to quality of life that you brought up, at least for me, and one of the challenges we had was integrating some of those people. These are well-educated people. How do we integrate them into Livermore, into the United States? Because oftentimes this is their first experience with living in the United States. And I was always hoping that we would be able to figure out a way to make them feel more welcome rather than just, them walking out the gate at night and then trying to figure out what to do on their own.
Right.
So I would ask you to, as you think about quality of life, Brandon and I probably talked about this before, but as you think about quality of life, I would think about that as well. And lastly, whenever I did a strategic plan, I always asked myself, how is it going to change my behavior? And if it didn't, then what was the point?
Yes.
And so I would ask you, as you prepare this, are there ways that you see that you're going to change what we do? I mean, I think your point about making, action items or whatever you want to call it, and present it to us, I think is a great idea. But I really, really think hard about not just writing down a bunch of words, but how it's going to change your behavior, our behavior as a community, as a council, as a city staff, and so on, to build on what you want to do in terms of creating innovative and economic vitality of this community.
I very much appreciate those words. I come from project management, and I set goals and try to find the path to get to those goals. And so to me, strategic planning is important because you need to know the direction you're headed, and you need to have consensus and buy-in in that direction, and that takes some time to develop. But You'll notice this is not a multi-year
Right.
process with lots of consultants and heavy investment of funds. This is, let's do our best to understand the data that we have available to us. Let's be transparent about inputting into that process and make sure that we are headed in the right direction, and then let's move forward with concrete action items.
And it also may mean you quit doing something that you've been doing.
Right.
So
Yes.
don't be afraid to stop doing something that hasn't paid off,
Correct.
or that you don't think that you think is lower priority and you just don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Took the words out of my mouth there, council member.
To the Vice Mayor's point, one of the issues, one of the programs we've got going to engage the foreign nationals like you're talking about is, get them down to the switch at iGate.
Yes.
And get them involved with some of the folks down there. Another program, which is in the chamber right now, is the Next program, which is all about bringing in some of the younger demographic, the younger professionals, and getting them involved in the community. Not only being more engaged, but also seeking positions of involvement and leadership. So I think the Next program is that's just some great promise as well on how do you integrate folks into the community. Okay, Councilmember Monroe.
So a couple of things. I noticed that there's the question of housing and jobs together. How do you see those fitting together in your data analysis? Clearly, you're looking to increase the number of jobs. How do the two things mesh? So that's question one.
Yes, it's a complicated answer. I think when we talk about the labs, for instance, and their need to hire up several hundred people in one calendar year, where do we house those folks? Or is there opportunity within Livermore? If not, where are they coming from? What kind of commute do they have? What sense of ownership of their community are they developing elsewhere? And some of that is supply. Some of that is impacted by a range of issues. If it's their first time in the United States, they may have a different view of education or cultural amenities or restaurant options or things, some of which we may provide, some of which we may not. And so looking at the range of issues and talking directly with HR at the two labs and say, what do you see as your pinch points? Is it access? Is it cost of housing? Is it amenity? Is it, what is challenging your hiring environment? And doing that to the different sectors of the economy and seeing what comes out on the other side. Housing is a dominant conversation and will be in Sacramento and across the Bay Area for years to come. We've undersupplied housing as a region. Livermore is unique in that it has a strong and healthy jobs housing balance. But we still need to provide housing and housing at different access points. We don't have enough affordable housing anywhere in California. And that's true in just about every jurisdiction in California. How do we do that? That is a very difficult and financially steep hill to climb. And that's going to be a challenge facing the entire state. And it has real strong impacts on our economic development. If we have businesses that thrive here and they can no longer hire here because people can't afford to live here, they'll look to relocate, and that's to our detriment. So you have to look at things holistically.
So going to other data that I'd like to see.
Yes.
As well as stakeholders. So I'm wondering about, there it is. Environmental impacts of the various, can we talk about what the environmental impact would be, how we minimize that as we go forward, not to say we don't do it, but as we go forward, how do we do it in the most sustainable way possible? That would be one question. And then secondly, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking we have other populations that frequently, we know the tech field is notoriously, how shall I say, demographically challenged with regard to some demographics. So I'm curious about that question. I'm also curious, I know Livermore has a very large Latinx population. I'd like that population specifically reached out to. Going back to the question of those who are unsheltered. I don't know that there's a place, well, I do actually. We have Very Cool, sorry, which specifically works with some giving people a second chance. I'm curious to know if we can reach out to some of those groups as well. So in other words, what we have here looks to me to be the groups I would expect and I would want information from. The groups I've mentioned, let's see if we can pull them in as well.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that. What I want to make clear is we're not targeting what in San Francisco we always called the FANG companies: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and Salesforce. And so we're not looking for high-rise towers full of developers and coders and the same impacts that they have brought to those communities. It's just not appropriate here. What we're looking at is those intersections within our industrial where we have an assembly component, and that's either advanced manufacturing or biotechnology or a Vericool, which was our Game Change Award recipient this year, and they hire formerly incarcerated members, giving them a second chance, and they make recyclable, compostable shipping containers here in town to send medical devices and perishable foods all over the country and the world. And they're phenomenally successful and growing, and that's the kind of thing that we think is appropriate given our land use and our skilled talent pool.
Yeah, and I was so appreciative that they were our game changer, and that to me is what I'd like Livermore to continue to be.
It's the real triple bottom line.
I got to thinking about this part on the agenda as I was reading it earlier over the weekend, and was thinking about what can be done to develop our wine industry, which is world-class, but not yet world-known. And that's the next step to take it. And what we're doing to get it out there, and it's not your job necessarily, but it's certainly a part of economic development in town.
I'll taste my way towards that.
Exactly, yeah, yes. But I'm just curious if you've had any input or ideas as to where we could go to make it recognizable throughout the world as an industry leader here in Livermore. You know, we're as old as Napa, and we wineries here have been around a while, yet we're largely not of that stature yet. And
one of the reasons for that is because Lodi is an international wine destination.
Yes.
Because they have a hotel. They have a full-service hotel.
Well, I was getting to that.
Livermore
I was getting to that.
Sorry to jump on it. But Livermore does not have an appropriate
No, you're
hotel.
absolutely right.
And that's one of the reasons.
Talking to a winery owner today, this afternoon, and just was curious about the things we could do to push this and develop it. And it's a big part of our history, and I'd like to see it lead the town. We have a number of leaders, in technology, and after all that technology, you got to have a few sips of Cabernet, So it's got to come home every day. So I figured if we can make it all work together, there's a way for the wine industry to become. It's so good. Why shouldn't it be as renowned as it is?
And we're starting to get a little of that recognition on the Today Show, coming up with a zip trip on KTVU, others that want to highlight that wine industry. But you're right, when I talk to Visit Tri-Valley and I go to the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association, the average daily spend of a day visitor is in the order of $60, $70. The average daily spend of an overnight visitor is more like $250 because not only are they spending the night, but they're going out to dinner, maybe also to breakfast. They might do some shopping. They spend more time at our destinations, which has an economic development impact. If we want to credibly market our wine industry to a Bay Area population as a weekend getaway, think of, what Napa and Sonoma offer are Michelin-starred restaurants and very expensive hotels, but what they also offer is a weekend experience. And today we have a day experience and a convenience hotel by the 580.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. Thank you.
Forgot one group. School kids, actually,
Great.
Children.
Thank you.
Speaking of wine, I think I saw in the paper that county supervisors are asking to look at loosening the regulations or rules or
B&Bs.
for B&Bs. And okay, you're aware of that.
Yes, they had an effort some years back, and it resulted in exactly one destination, which we all know, the Purple Orchid.
Right.
And they're looking to revisit that because I think they sense the same need.
Okay.
Councilmember Warner?
Yeah, one other thought in terms of the stakeholders that you might want to put in here explicitly are the arts groups.
Great. I appreciate that.
Okay. Let's see. Just a couple things to point out, though. What struck me was when I read the 1996 strategic plan and a lot of the issues through there, I was struck by the similarities between the goals that we're looking for now and the things that were a good idea back then.
They had a pretty good associate planner on the team at the time.
In fact, there was a picture that looked remarkably like him. In, yes. So the other thing that was struck me was in this, there were 15 wineries.
Yes.
And now we have over 50.
Correct.
And talking about building the retail opportunities. Earlier, the shopping was identified. 31% of the residents thought we had good shopping opportunities here. This year, 72%.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of successes that we have, and I think we'll continue to build on those. And I think this is a great place to start. So good report. I do have a couple of cards, so if no one else has any other questions, I'll open up the public comment period. Greg Scott and Brent Seiler. Mr. Scott.
Greg Scott, we have a healthy jobs, housing balance. Then explain to me what's going on out there on Interstate 580. That's crazy. And there's going to be another 5,000 to 7,000 homes built in Tracy in the short term. Wow. So our transportation systems are in serious trouble, and I don't understand the innovation on that one. We're pushing out the low-wage people. They live in Modesto, Escalon, wherever. That doesn't seem very healthy. And we're also condensing the middle. What do the economic elites talk about at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland recently? They talk about automation. What's the automation going to do? It's going to squeeze the middle. It's going to squeeze the middle right out. It's called creative destruction. There's 45 companies financed to the tune of $100 million in San Francisco that are putting artificial intelligence on chips. People think their white-collar jobs are around forever. They're going away. Wow. If you really want to seed innovation, you need a major university. You need a UC campus. Look where the innovation is. Stanford University. Here's David Packard and Bill Hewlett with their audio amplifier for Fantasia, and it just boomed from there. Berkeley. UC Berkeley, and now booming is the CRISPR technology. If you need a major university to seed an innovation hub here. I'm just surprised at the callousness of the economics here, the disparity that's just accelerating. And if you want a good series of articles, it's in the last November Scientific American. The series of articles is called The Science of Inequality. And the Nobel Prize laureate economist Joseph Stiglitz wrote a great article in there called The Rigged Economy. This is what this is, the rigged economy. And we are more in debt now, each household is more in debt now than the households were previous to the Great Recession. And then in the Great Recession, what brought that about was these little things called collateral debt obligations. Well, now we've changed the acronym. Now it's collateral loan obligations. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, go to the website of the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of central banks in Switzerland, and read what they're talking about, what's going on in the world. The debts are enormous. I mean, the federal government debt, the commercial debt, and the consumer debt in this country is over $72 trillion. How does that go along? Because we are the world's reserve currency. We can do that because of the military. China has other ideas in the South China Sea. If you don't maintain the South China Sea as international waters, good luck to you.
Thank you. Brent Seiler.
Initially, I wasn't going to speak on it, but based on your comments, it made me think of Billy Beane. When the A's were tight for money, what did he do? He went out and got lesser players that people thought were no good. And that's what I just heard you say about the technology sector. I think technology sector is a play here. Yes, we do have a space A problem for office space. My business may have to relocate because we're growing. We took in 3 years an idea and grew it to a $75 million company. We're on par for $100 million this year. We're hiring between 3 to 4 people a month. I don't have any space to grow here in Livermore. So now, like you said, I've got to start looking at Hacienda, or I'm going to go over to Tracy because more people are over there. When you talk about the tech side of it, look at the logic of your conversation. Most of the people don't live in Silicon Valley. They live here, Tracy, Lodi, places like that. If we could bring the tech companies into here, we're going to cut their commute in half. To Councilman Monroe's point, you know, there's a definitive green deal that we could do right there. You know, could we, since we have industrial space, could we have a consolidated center, tech center, where they can come to Livermore and perform their job versus continuing the drive all the way down to there? We've got the infrastructure. Why not just tell Google and all those people, hardwire yourself in, put your people here in Livermore? I think the tech center is something that we could use, okay? I would be knocking on the door at Abbott over in Pleasanton. I left Abbott. We got a, what was it, 36,000 square foot warehouse. They could consolidate from Pleasanton out to here where they already have 400 employees sitting off National Drive. So I think there's an opportunity more that we could do to grow what we're doing here, bring more people in, but I think the tech sector is a play here in Livermore. If not, we wouldn't be having that center downtown driving innovation into our community and building the jobs that it's building. So please don't cut the tech sector short. It's going to be an important role. And I think if we can get those people that are commuting from out in the Central Valley somehow here in Livermore, we're going to grow much faster the tech sector. Because all you're doing right now is you're putting the big hitters up there, not the people who can swing and get on base every single time.
Thank you. To Mr. Seiler's point about bringing companies here, one of the interesting prejudices that I have found is you talk to some of these companies in Silicon Valley, and they're actually trying to poach some of our companies in iGate, in the switch. And what they say is, well, when are you going to become a real company and move to Silicon Valley? So there's this mindset that you can't be a real company unless you're in Silicon Valley. And we would love to have them here. In fact, we have brought a number of high-tech companies to Livermore because their workers couldn't get to their jobs. We brought Gillig in here. Gillig came to Livermore, bringing over 900 jobs because it was too difficult to get to Hayward. And so they relocated here. A couple of Fremont companies relocated. It's up to the companies to do that. What we do here in Livermore is we create a wonderful quality of life, and we have a very highly educated workforce. So that is what attracts companies here. We're out there, we got our welcome mat out for these companies to come here. I'm on 28 different boards and committees, and we're always talking about bringing jobs out to Livermore, to the Tri-Valley, because the Tri-Valley is an economic engine. You read the Bay Area Council report, and this is the happening place. We've got a highly educated workforce on the other side of the hill, and when I'm on the Valley Link committee, what I hear from the representatives in San Joaquin County is, we don't just want a rail link that's going to take our workers out of the valley. We want a rail link that's going to bring jobs and businesses into our region, into the San Joaquin Valley, so that people are going to be commuting into San Joaquin County to work here. So there's this struggle about trying to bring in more jobs with Valley Link, at the same time allowing people to connect Valley Link to the jobs. To Mr. Scott's point, the fact that we have a one-to-one jobs housing balance in Livermore, that's a wonderful thing here. The reason that people are driving out to San Joaquin County to find housing is because in the last 7 years, they created 500,000 jobs in Santa Clara and San Francisco counties. 500,000 jobs, and there were 60,000 housing units. So you have a 10-to-1 jobs housing imbalance. And when you have that 10-to-1 jobs housing imbalance, there's no place for these people to live. So that's why they have to drive from their homes in the San Joaquin Valley to get to the Silicon Valley in San Francisco, because that's where the jobs are. We're trying to create that balance. Livermore has that balance here. Unfortunately, many cities on the peninsula side don't have that. So we're trying to correct that. We can't do it ourselves. So that's why we're creating these plans to connect them. But yeah, it's not only our responsibility. Spaceship Apple landed in Cupertino, and they didn't add any new housing. Vice Mayor.
But to Mr. Seiler's point, I thought it was an interesting one. I think, if I understood him correctly, is think about those tech workers that work at home, or they drive to Silicon Valley. Is there an alternative to have here in Livermore, this, quote, tech center that he talked about, where they wouldn't have to drive so far? Maybe they live here, maybe they live in Tracy. They wouldn't have to commute all the way to the Silicon Valley, but provide the amenities that they would need that are more than what they might have at the home from their computer, but they don't have to go all the way to Silicon Valley to their job. I think that's an interesting idea. I don't know whether that might play out in an interesting way or not, but I think it's
up to their employer.
No, well, I mean, somebody's got to provide the space, right? And I don't know. I think that's an interesting idea to think about.
Any other questions, comments? Any further direction for the staff?
No, I think they've got a good path forward.
I think I need a motion to accept the report. Motion made by Councilmember Warner, seconded by Councilmember Monroe. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Go
Thank you very much.
Be creative and innovative. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have a request to take a quick break before we tackle the next issue, 6.03. Everybody, okay. Let's take about 10 minutes back here, and we'll resume around 9 o'clock. Thank you. Well, good evening, and welcome back to round 2 of the April 8th meeting of the Livermore City Council. We've gone through first part of the agenda. We're now at item 6.03, which is the Valley Link Transit Project Update and the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan. We've got Steve Riley, Principal Planner, Ashley McBride, the Assistant Planner, and Bob Vinn, our Assistant City Engineer up here. So take it away.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, members of the Council. You might remember Steve, Ashley, and myself were the BART to Isabelle and the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan team. So tonight we're going to be giving you an update on the Valley Link Transit Project and the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan. We are not asking you tonight to approve anything as far as the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan or the Valley Link project, but rather we recommend you receive the update on the Valley Link project and authorize staff to update the environmental documentation for the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan, and direct staff to return with documents necessary to consider readopting the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan and EIR at a later date. Okay. So with that, next slide, please. Assembly Bill 758 established a new rail authority, the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority, which the city of Livermore is a member of the 15-member agency. And this agency has one goal: to connect BART with ACE in the Tri-Valley as a cost-effective and efficient rail connection. And in May of 2018, you might recall the City Council approved the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan conditionally on the BART Board of Directors approving the extension to Livermore. However, the BART Board certified their EIR but failed to approve any project or alternative to extend BART to Livermore, thus leaving the rail planning in the Tri-Valley up to this new rail authority. And next slide, the rail authority has come up with a project called Valley Link. And the Valley Link project, let's see, okay, that's a little bit out of focus on my eyes, but this is 580 here, this is 680, so we have Dublin, Pleasanton here, Livermore here, the Altamont here, and this is the Central Valley. So we would be running a rail system from the existing Dublin Pleasanton station, where we would have a platform at the BART station. It would run through Livermore with stations at Isabelle and Greenville, over the Altamont Pass with stations in the Central Valley, Mountain House, Tracy, Lathrop, and ultimately up to Stockton. There would be ACE connections at Greenville and at North Lathrop. This project would be using not BART technology, but a DMU rail technology. It would be using diesel electric or biodiesel electric locomotives that could be converted to full electric in the future. And it's similar to what BART just deployed in the Highway 4 corridor for the E-BART extension. Next slide, please. Oh, I have it here. There we go. So how does it compare to the BART project? It's very different. What's shown in green is a graphic depiction of what the BART project was, which was to a 5-mile extension from Dublin Pleasanton to Isabelle, with a tail track and a maintenance yard located there in North Livermore. The Valley Link project is close to 40 miles, I believe, and the maintenance yard is proposed to be on the other side of the Altamont near the Mountain House station. The cost of the BART to Isabelle project was estimated at $1.6 billion. The current estimate for this Valley Link project all the way out to North Lathrop would be $1.8 billion, about the same cost, a little bit more.
But we're talking about 5 miles versus 42 miles.
Correct.
Yeah. Perspective.
In the Tri-Valley, it would be similar to BART in that it would run down the middle of the freeway. The stations would be in the middle of the freeway at Isabelle. And there would be parking provided, although the parking BART proposed, because at the time it would have been an end-of-the-line station, was a 7 to 8 story parking structure on the south side of Isabelle. So Valley Link's looking at the same location, but their parking demand analysis showing the need right now for just a surface lot. And they're still refining those numbers. Potentially it could be a small structure, but nowhere near the size of the structure that the BART project proposed. The BART project estimated about 11,000 new BART riders per day for the Isabelle extension. The ridership is still being developed for Valley Link, so I don't have exact numbers to quote you, but they're looking at similar ridership numbers to BART and potentially a lot higher when we get out into the valley. The BART project was proposing, BART headways, which is currently 15-minute peak hour. They're proposing to go to 12-minute. The Valley Link project is proposing the same headways in the Tri-Valley as BART to match the BART trains at Dublin Pleasanton. So it would be 12-minute headways during the peak hours and 30-minute during non-peak. For the trips coming from the Valley, it would be double those headways. So instead of 12-minute peak hour, would be 24-minute. What that means is every other train during the peak hour would start at Greenville empty and head over to Dublin Pleasanton. So Livermore residents should have an easy time getting a seat on this train. Next slide. All right, so the current status and schedule. The Valley Link team is working on a feasibility report for the state legislature that is on track to be submitted at the end of June. They're also working on a project and program EIR for the project. The scoping document was completed in the fall of last year. They're busy doing technical studies, traffic modeling, and such. And they expect the draft impact report to be available for public review sometime this summer, with adoption late summer or fall. The Valley Link, the San Joaquin, the Tri-Valley San Joaquin, how about the Rail Authority? Rail Authority just approved a design build strategy for constructing it. So in the fall, once they have 30% design complete, then they can start working on documents to actually get a design build contractor under contract to complete the design. We might see, this is a best case schedule down here, assuming we can get the funding we need to build the project. But we could have construction starting in end of 2020, 2021 area timeframe, and the rail service could be running somewhere between 2023 and 2026. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ashley to talk about the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan.
All right. So if you recall, last year, on May 14th, the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan was brought to the City Council and adopted. This was contingent on the full BART extension to Livermore. In addition, the program EIR that was done for the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan was also certified at the same meeting. However, the EIR was not contingent on the BART approval. Staff was directed to return if another alternative other than full BART service was selected. Following that meeting, the BART Board of Directors failed to approve an extension to Livermore. So therefore, the Isabelle Neighborhood Plan did not go into effect. However, the EIR remains certified. So the planning area covers approximately 1,100 acres, shown in the northwest portion of the city. The city prepared the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan to guide development in the area surrounding a future transit station. Like the former BART proposal, the Valley Link station would be located in the I-580 median, as Bob mentioned. The yellow circle, a little difficult to see on this graph, but the yellow circle shows the radius, the half-mile radius from the proposed transit station. City Council directed staff to begin preparation of the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan in 2014. Since then, the planning process has included five phases as shown here on this slide. Each phase involved extensive public outreach, including meeting with residents and property owners within and around the station area. City Council provided additional direction at the end of the alternatives and preferred plan phases before directing staff to move forward with preparing the draft plan and the draft environmental documentation in late 2016. Community feedback from the first planning phase established a vision for the neighborhood, which includes the 6 themes shown here on this slide. Together, these principles will create a vibrant, walkable, well-designed neighborhood that is complete with surrounding development and integrates natural areas, community spaces, and amenities. The specific plan includes these 8 chapters. The format of the specific plan is similar in its structure to other specific plans here in the city, such as the South Livermore Valley specific plan and the downtown specific plan. This diagram shows the new zoning designations that would apply to the neighborhood. If ultimately adopted, these new zoning designations would replace the existing regulatory framework. As we mentioned earlier, the Valley Link station would be here in I-580 median. In addition, there are 4 residential districts that are shown here on this graphic. You'll see that the light yellow colored residential districts, they are called our transition and village categories, and those categories allow for townhomes, garden-style apartments, and similar housing types to be built. The other 2 residential categories we have are known as our center and core housing, and they are shown in the browns, closer to the inner core of the neighborhood. And these types of housing development would support multi-story apartments and condominium buildings. As the names imply, the transition and village sites are located around the edge of the site, and the center and core are located closer into the center of the development. In addition, the red area here is a retail designation that allows for neighborhoods serving retail uses, such as shops and restaurants. These uses would be located along a main street within a retail center that would be located on this block. The plan also includes commercial uses. The business park and general commercial uses shown in the pink and coral colors are roughly on the western edge of the planning area. The existing zoning would be replaced with a cohesive modern set of zoning standards in these areas. The office categories in the plan are shown in the purples, and these allow for more intense development than the business park designations, while being concentrated around the Valley Link station to support high-quality office development. In addition, the plan includes 3 neighborhood parks, and these parks would be centrally located to serve new residential uses. This is our change area graphic. This graphic shows the properties most likely to experience new development or redevelopment within the plan area. These properties include vacant or underutilized lands, as well as properties that received a new land use type or increased development intensity. It's important to note the implementation of the land use plan is owner initiated, meaning that development or redevelopment would only occur if property owners initiate an application or entitlements. This table shows the plan's overall capacity for new development at build-out of the plan or the year 2040. Some highlights here: this would allow for 4,095 new housing units and approximately 2.1 million square feet of new non-residential development, supporting over 9,000 jobs in the city. The plan includes a goal for 25% of the new units to be subsidized at below market rates, which would equate to approximately 1,000 new affordable units here in the city. There are 2 main strategies to help achieve this goal in the plan. The first is an increased inclusionary requirement. The city's inclusionary housing ordinance currently requires residential development to allocate 15% of the total units as affordable units at low and moderate income levels. The plan proposes to increase this requirement to 20% by including a mix of income target levels. The second strategy to meet this requirement would include partnerships with nonprofits to develop standalone, affordable, and mixed income projects. The plan would include a phasing program that would link the land use changes to the progress of the Valley Link project. Specifically, Phase 1 is linked to the approval of the Valley Link project. Phase 1 is shown as the polygons outlined in black, and these include new business park and commercial uses to replace the mix of planned developments that are currently existing in this area, as well as the transition and village properties on the outer edges of the planning area next to existing residential development. And finally, this area in the core of the planning area to allow for that high quality office development, as well as the retail center. Phase 2 is shown in the blue polygons and includes 2 properties north and south of 580 that are owned by BART. And these would include office uses, residential uses, and as Bob alluded to earlier, some parking. Phase 3 is shown in red, and these would go into effect when the construction of the Valley Link project begins. The final phase includes the center, some of these center and core housing units, as well as some of this business park. The plan identifies 3 scenic corridor amendment areas: the core, the East Airway, and the Portola areas. Within the amendment areas, development would be subject to height limits rather than a view angle. These amended height limits considered several factors, including scenic views, compatibility and scale with adjacent uses, the proximity to the airport, and the proximity to the Isabelle Valley Link station. In general, maximum building heights are tallest near the planned Valley Link station and taper down to a transition with existing residential uses. The city adopted the Airport Protection Area, or the APA, in 1991 to encourage noise-compatible land uses around the airport. As shown on this slide, the APA is a rectangular area that covers about 65% of the planning area and extends from the airport runways 5,000 feet to the north, south, and east towards Livermore, and about 7,100 feet to the west towards Pleasanton. Residential uses are prohibited within the APA, necessitating an amendment to the land use element of the general plan to allow for build-out of the residential uses in the Isabelle neighborhood plan. The Isabelle neighborhood plan would retain the boundaries of the APA, but propose an overlay as shown here on this slide in the northeast corner of the APA. In this overlay area, the city would only allow residential uses with conditions aimed at increasing resident awareness of the airport proximity to the airport proximity to the neighborhood, excuse me. No other portion of the APA would be modified. Through the Isabelle plan assessment, the airport land use compatibility plan was also reviewed, which designates safety zones, noise compatibility zones, and height limits based upon current federal and state regulations. The Isabelle neighborhood plan was found to be consistent with noise, safety, airspace protection, and overflight annoyance criteria in the airport land use compatibility plan. To account for the changes between the BART and Valley Link projects, additional environmental documentation would be required. Per CEQA, a supplemental EIR would be required. Staff is currently pursuing a Senate Bill 2 grant to offset this EIR cost. If council directs staff to move forward with updating the Isabelle neighborhood plan, staff recommends that the plan remain intact during this interim period. This approach would ensure a complete and vibrant neighborhood with a mix of housing, businesses, and community uses. In addition, keeping the specific plan intact is beneficial for the financial feasibility of the plan. If the planning area were to be developed through a piecemealed approach and not part of a comprehensive plan, then it is unlikely that some of the infrastructure amenities, such as the trails, the parks, the retail, could be built under the envisioned plan, under the specific plan as it is currently envisioned. In addition, beyond building a complete neighborhood that would be served by transit, the specific plan would support the city's housing goals. The state has passed extensive legislation in 2017 and 2018 due to concerns around a lack of housing production and housing affordability. This specific plan would not only supply additional housing needs, but could help the city in meeting their regional housing needs assessment allocations in a well-planned, concentrated area. So with that, staff recommends that the City Council authorize staff to update the environmental documentation for the Isabelle Neighborhood Specific Plan, as well as direct staff to return with documents necessary to consider readopting the neighborhood plan and the EIR. As a reminder, no action is being asked on either of these projects tonight. And with that, this concludes our presentation, and we're available for questions.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions for the staff at this point?
Wow, that's a mouthful. A lot of good stuff going on. I was curious about the part that is currently owned by BART. How willing is BART? Is BART working with us so we can acquire that property? Do we need to acquire that property, or are they willing to give it up, given our relationship with them so far?
So the Valley Link team, and I'd like to point out that Michael Tree, the executive director of
You know him well.
the Rail Authority, is here if you have any questions of him. But or if I misspeak, I'm sure he'll jump up. But I've been told the Valley Link team has had several conversations with BART about acquiring the land they need to build the project.
The other part was, as to the Valley Link part, what's the intended path? We saw a route there, but I mean, when you get out on the actual route, will it use something adjacent to the current ACE UP tracks out there? Will there be another rail line or
Sure.
new set of tracks built somewhere?
Sure. So I'll go through the whole alignment quickly. In the Tri-Valley, the path is the freeway median, just like was envisioned with BART. Once it gets to Greenville Road, and the ACE train comes over the Altamont on the Union Pacific right-of-way shared with the freight, there's a second right-of-way there that's been abandoned. It's currently owned by Alameda County, and it was originally, I think, Western Pacific, part of the Transcontinental Railroad. And so the plan is to utilize that right-of-way for Valley Link up and over the Altamont down to the Mountain House station. From Mountain House all the way to Stockton, they're looking at either leasing track or leasing right-of-way from UP. So
Okay,
they
cool.
would be within existing rail corridor.
Yeah, I wondered about that old Western Pacific section out there along Altamont Pass Road, if that looked like it was. But I know East Bay Parks had some plans to extend the Iron Horse Trail out that far eventually. That's in their long-term plans. So this would, it's not a bad use of it. Put a railroad in there. That's good. Thank you.
Councilmember Monroe?
Well, one of my questions just got answered. And I'm curious about the supplemental EIR. You said you were pursuing a grant. I'm wondering what the cost of, regardless of grant or no grant, I'm just wondering how much that costs.
Sure. So to update the EIR through a supplemental EIR process, we're looking at a cost of about $175,000.
And how much? And we can get a grant that, assuming they give us the grant, it'll cover the whole thing, or?
Yes, that's correct. SB funds for our size jurisdiction are by right, so we just have to have a project that has a potential to substantially increase housing stock. And this project is certainly one doing something either within an existing neighborhood or of a much smaller scale would likely not be eligible for those grant funds, and those grant funds are capped at $250,000. They reimburse an actual project when that project is ultimately the planning for it is complete.
So this is a plan that could go out as long as 2040. Ideally, never BART. Valley Link will be in by 2023, 2026. what's the time frame for approving this and for that linkage together? I mean, I could see that there's, steps in the way. So in other words, what I'm asking is, you're going to bring this back to us. Let's say we don't approve it. We say, we'll think about it. We'll come back to us in a couple of years. What are the consequences?
So another area the Valley Link team is having lots of conversations is with various people about funding. They're talking to people at MTC. They're talking to people in Sacramento. And although there's currently not a strict requirement for any particular housing count for the Valley Link project or any type of TOD, what they're hearing, or at least what they're telling me they're hearing, is that housing is very important to the people that have the money, and they expect some level of TOD related to the project, all the stations here. So that being said, if we don't have any approved at the time Valley Link needs to get their funding, it may be detrimental to having the project move forward.
The other item to remember is that the project is divided into 3 phases on purpose. And those phases are hard stops. So essentially, phase 1 you could characterize as being much like the development that is out there right now. It's a very modest level of units, less than 25% of the overall project, as well as some product types that probably would depend on rail, so they would actually weight the ones that are closer to the core there. And if Valley Link never ultimately obtained all of its funding or started construction, that essentially would be the part of the plan that would be constructed by right. Probably the most noticeable change was the one that staff talked about, is if we don't ultimately begin planning for what we want to see here, we'll ultimately see something very different. Property owners have a right to develop their property currently. We ultimately want to, if the council ultimately adopts a vision, having a checkerboard of warehouses in an area where you wanted your downtown, your neighborhood core, or having portions of your open space or trail network not completed because it's now financially infeasible and would need a subsidy from the rest of the city to complete those links. That would probably be the item that makes this, along with the grant funding, which is eligible now, and as sort of a necessary step to ultimately establish the funding for Valley Link as well, sort of your top 3 reasons for why we're bringing this before you at this point.
Questions? Councilmember Warner?
A couple of questions on the housing. You say 4,100 new units, and what's the average number of people per unit?
About 1.8, between 1.8 and 2.0.
So this is a significant fraction of between now and build out. Is that the way you think about it?
Yeah, a good way to think about this is it's a 20-year plan. Your growth management program will actually require the units to be allocated in that format. So you're talking about 200 units a year. That's pretty consistent with what you are developing currently. That number does range from a little less than 200 to more than 400 over the past few years. But this would be a significant bulk of the units being built in that 20-year period.
So this isn't necessarily increasing our unit rate?
No, in fact, it's explicitly required to not do that. It lives under your existing growth management program. What it means is there'd be more development in this part of the community than in other parts of the community at that time.
Okay, so it's really choosing where. And not an additional amount.
And then the other item is this is not increasing the total amount of your general plan build-out. General plan build-out was set in your 2003 general plan. This ultimately relocates the transit-oriented development, which placed at the Greenville location, and places it at Isabelle. So this is consistent with your original plan from 2003 as far as the maximum number of units in our general plan.
And the other thing, and we noted in some of the other council meetings that we could do more with respect to the lower ends of the affordable housing. Is there a way? I noticed that what you're saying here is there's a higher percentage of this that's affordable, but can we also tweak it so that we emphasize the lower end?
And one of the things we can do with our inclusionary program, the details of that program were not ultimately developed with the previous Isabelle. They were an implementation step. During this next planning period, we could take a closer look at the financial. That basically boils down to financial feasibility and partnering with outside funding sources. So that's absolutely something we can take a look at.
Okay, and then just want to make sure I heard it, that just like the earlier plan, this whole thing is contingent upon Valley Link coming.
Yes.
I mean, the housing part of it.
You have three
So
triggers, yes.
So it's no really different than before in that sense.
Correct. For example, if Valley Link's ultimately not approved, the plan wouldn't take effect. In this particular case, you're going to have the ability, since we're likely to be to the end of this year before you'd even have a decision like that in front of you, you'll have much more information on Valley Link than you did on BART at the time you're going to be asked to reconsider the project.
So this isn't making a decision on the project. It's just an enabling thing. And from what I've heard earlier from what Mr. Vin said, a key thing here is the improving the chances for getting funding for Valley Link by at least taking this step.
Yes.
And I see Michael Tree is in the audience. Could we ask him to?
Absolutely.
Could you comment your perspective, tell people who you are and why you think this step is important at this point?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Michael Tree. I'm the Executive Director with the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority. And over the last several months, we've been spending a lot of time in Sacramento. I think the bulk of your funding opportunity for Valley Link will come from the state, either from the TIRCIP program, which is the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or congested corridors, or perhaps some special legislation. We're looking at all of those. And as we visited members of the Assembly Transportation Committee and the Senate Transportation Committee, they note that housing is super important, and in all of those programs that I had mentioned, housing will be key in the scoring for the competitive funding. So I would rate housing probably as one of the top priorities of the state at this point in regard to transportation dollars, both at the end of 2019 and in 2020.
With regard to that, are the other communities that have stations along the way having the same discussions that we're having here tonight?
They are. The City of Tracy last week approved a resolution to have staff bring back a TOD amendment for their general plan. And River Islands, which is part of the Lathrop community, equally has an amendment in right now in application for TOD at their station.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any questions? One question, I just wanted to clarify something. And this is one of these, it's almost a misnomer, but it refers to the Airport Protection Plan and the Airport Protection Area. And I just want to clarify, the Airport Protection Area is actually an area to protect the airport from basically noise complaints from residents. It's not a protection area to protect residents. It's actually there to protect the airport. Is that correct?
Yeah, in our review of the when the APA was adopted in 1991, it explicitly talked about encroachments from residential, which would cause noise complaints for the airport.
Right, because some people think that it's to protect the residents, but actually what it is to protect the airport from having adverse impacts on the neighborhoods. So, and it's generating complaints. So it's not protecting the residents, it's actually protecting the airport. Okay, got it? Okay.
Yes, your safety zones, flight angles, and a variety of other criteria protect residents and safety. And there is, the plan is completely consistent with all of those regulations.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clear. Okay, any other questions? In that case, I'll open up the public comment period. I got about half a dozen cards here. Ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. And Michael Ferrucci, Donna Caban, John Stein.
Good evening, Mayor Marchant, council members. Michael Ferrucci, 508 South Livermore Avenue. I've been authorized by the Board of Directors of the Citizens for Balanced Growth to make the following statement. Citizens for Balanced Growth has been analyzing growth issues and educating the public for 37 years. Considering that transportation is paramount and certainly a key area of our organization's focus, it's difficult at best for us to imagine, comprehend, and justify why it would be a good idea at this time to resurrect the Isabelle Neighborhood Project. Let us remember the lessons learned from the failed BART extension. Multiple agencies demanded that Livermore plan the Isabelle neighborhood before they would even consider building the BART extension. With little or no hope those agencies might be, with little or no other acceptable options, Livermore held up our end of the bargain with hope that these agencies might be nice enough to reciprocate. Quite frankly, astronomical costs totaling millions of dollars, as well as significant staff hours, months and years have unfortunately wasted the time of our city staff as well as our citizens. However, one bright spot in May of last year, the council's 100% commitment that if Livermore did not get full BART, there would be no Isabelle neighborhood plan. To the council's credit, you honored that pledge. This issue would not have come back without the influence and promotion of the planned new train project called Valley Link. Despite the apparent momentum of Valley Link project, we believe that it is even less likely to become operational than BART extension ever was. It may actually be less useful to Valley residents than BART would have been. Truth is, it risks degrading the commuter experience by our residents unless the Isabelle planning process commences after rather than before the train is running and providing acceptable and dependable service. We strongly urge you to be wise and to avoid repeating the failed BART planning model. Unfortunately, your staff's proposal appears to do exactly that, plan. Our concern is the council's willingness to consider to embark on a humongous development project in parallel that appears to be codependent with a highly dubious transportation project. The BART EIR clearly articulated that BART would have no positive impact on traffic, on freeway traffic, a finding that surprised most people, but we fully expected it. The next honest EIR is due to be produced by the new authority and will likely show similar or worse traffic impacts. Transit-oriented development may someday make sense to build around the Isabelle and 580 location. However, it is essential that a clearly and intelligently planned development should be created only after a commuter rail station is operational and successfully utilized, not before. At that time, it will be easy to determine how much excess passenger space will exist on the new train, BART, and the freeway. Then and only then could the proposed neighborhood be planned with surplus transportation capacity in full view and designed to avoid creating any new bottlenecks or slowdowns. The actual, not theoretical, transportation capacity would enable a development plan to proceed that would be far less likely to restrict or burden our transportation systems. In closing, in simplest terms, this time, Citizens for Balanced Growth recommends that it would be wise and prudent to wait until the train is in the station. The worst possible outcome would be to build a large development project without the necessary transportation infrastructure. If you bring the Isabelle neighborhood plan back, it will be the first step towards that eventuality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrucci. Donna Caban, John Stein, Splendorio.
Good evening, City Council members. Donna Caban. Staff is asking for an additional $175,000 to update an EIR for the Isabelle neighborhood plan. Why? We did not get BART, which was the driving force for the Isabelle plan. It would be premature and foolish to try and retrofit this plan from BART to a possible Valley Link transportation plan, which is still in the planning stages and is not funded. Staff contends that the Valley Link system is similar to BART and therefore justifies continuing this plan. That is based on speculation. The new transportation project and projected routes will not be provided until July 2019 at the earliest, and would only start in 2024 if San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority can compete and get funding based on their proposed routes. BART promised us a lot of routes. We paid taxes and paid for studies for decades and got nothing. We have been down this road before. Furthermore, a Valley Link connection does not, and I repeat, does not require 4,095 housing units or even any additional housing units. Even if we were to get a Valley Link in 2026 or beyond, this will not address the traffic gridlock that will be caused by 12,000 new residents, approximately 3 per unit, that's the Alameda County average, going to schools, grocery shopping, soccer practice, baseball practice, doctor, dentist, dry cleaner, etc. We don't need the amenities, 3 parks, if we don't have the 4,095 new housing units. Need for business space? We have empty business space right now. The former Nob Hill grocery store, Orchard Supply, etc. We already have hundreds of approved housing units to be built on Pacific Avenue, downtown, former PG&E site on First Street, etc. Building on infill sites in existing neighborhoods is preferable excuse me, to a new massive block of 4,095 units. Livermore has met its housing goals and continues to do so. We can meet further future requests with infill housing in existing neighborhoods. We cannot be expected to meet housing needs for the entire Bay Area. No more money should be spent on the Isabelle project at this time. You can always approve additional studies and money for environmental documentation if or when we have a viable mass transit system that is up and running in Livermore. We are nowhere near completion of that type of system now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caban. John Stein, Splendorio, Josh.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. One question. BART estimated something on the order of $2.5 billion to go from Greenville to the Dublin Pleasanton Station, mostly acquisition of right-of-way, relocation of the 2 center lanes, stations, and interchange improvements. How much is Rail Authority estimating the cost of that section of track? The other thing is, it seems like this project, while it was necessary to get BART, doesn't meet the city goals. One of the things is quality of life. This is perhaps the worst place to locate residential. You have noise from aircraft, which is periodic. You have noise from rail. You have noise from the freeway. It also has the highest level of air pollution in the entire Bay Area, primarily exhaust, cancer-producing exhaust from diesel trucks. It is against our goals of financial stability. You will have a satellite community, essentially, which will be very expensive to provide municipal services to, and residential that doesn't generate sufficient income to provide it. Right now, you're going to have research, you're going to have some light industrial, perhaps, medical, and financial. I mean, Lamb Research is there and will want to expand. Phoenix is there. There's some medical offices being planned, not warehouses. The other questions are the airport protection area. I was on the committee that set that up, and one of the goals was to protect the residents. We looked at unexplained landings around Reed Hillview, Palo Alto, and Hayward, and that was one of the criteria of selecting the area. This is the most dangerous point of the entire airport protection area because it's a downwind turn most of the time, and that's where planes lose lift. So the Airport Commission, the Pilots Association is all opposed to this because they feel it will curtail operations at the airport because of noise complaints, and if there's a major accident, would shut down the airport. I'm also concerned about the Scenic corridor. This would be a precedent-setting issue. We've already had, at the last go-around, 2 other property owners ask for exemptions from the scenic corridor. The character of the community is, to a large extent, open space and scenic vistas rather than looking like Dublin or San Jose. Also, our city general plan talks about decreasing density out from the flagpole. This is in direct violation of that. We're actually essentially duplicating south of Market along the freeway. Finally, 2 questions. One is, I don't think diesel multi-units can run on the same track as freight or heavy rail. And the other question is, in the longer term, what is to prevent the state or the county or some other government agency from taking over planning if we haven't developed the area ahead of time? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Splendorio, Josh, and Don Argula.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, Council. I'm Splendorio. I'm here on behalf of Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group, and I chair the Housing, Infrastructure, and Transportation Committee. In fact, Valley Link is our committee's #1 infrastructure project to advocate for this year. I've been here, and other members of the leadership group have come over the past few years to advocate on behalf of our employers for the Isabelle plan, because it provides needed housing of various types and also access to the employees that need to come into the area and go parts west. But I'm here to talk 2 things. One is I either had the pleasure or the curse of being part of Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group's Advocacy Day for the East Bay in Sacramento a couple of weeks ago, along with East Bay EDA and East Bay Leadership Group. And here's my 2 takeaways. The state is going to have some housing bills. I don't know if even they know what you're going to get, but that's what you're going to get. And the second that Mr. Tree emphasized is transportation projects of this magnitude, which may be one of the largest ever in the Tri-Valley, is going to be tied to housing and denser housing than maybe we're comfortable with. But that's my takeaways. And I led the questioning of the chair of the Appropriations Committee for the Assembly, and we asked the question, and that's what she said. It's going to be tied. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Splendorio. Josh and Don Argula.
How's it going, Council? My name's Josh. I'm here from in town. This is a first meeting I've been to in a very, very long time, so I'm sorry if I'm misinformed on anything. I'm generally in favor of a transport system. I think Livermore's needed one for a long time. I am disappointed in what happened with BART, and a lot of money that here Livermore citizens went into went towards nothing. I think we need due caution when it comes towards another system in terms of housing. And it's the same thing that we see at Dublin, in Dublin with all of the high-density housing that they put up. I feel that that's not Livermore, and the housing that I see going on right now currently over on that side of the highway isn't us. It's not what we do here. It's not a pretty sight. We also lack proper grocery centers for that side of town as well. And I think that's something that was neglected in this proposal. If you look at our current grocery centers, they're already impacted by the citizens that we have and that are growing. And I think something that's been overlooked is a proper grocery center for that area of town. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Don Argula.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, council members and staff. Dawn Argula, President and CEO of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm here tonight to express my support for the staff recommendation. The Chamber has, I just want to reaffirm our support for the Isabelle neighborhood plan, which we expressed in the past when it went through that very thorough and comprehensive planning and environmental process. And I'm pleased to see that all that work has not been for naught, because now we have another opportunity here with the Valley Link project. The supplemental EIR for $175,000 sounds like a lot of money to the average person. It is. But in the world of infrastructure and transportation projects, it is not even a drop in the bucket. And we do have grant funds that we're eligible for to cover that cost, and so that's a good thing. I think so far everything's in our favor. We will be very competitive if we activate that process again for that neighborhood as we go forward with the Valley Link project, which is also one of our highest priority infrastructure projects for the Chamber, as well as for the newly formed Tri-Valley Chamber of Commerce Alliance, which is the 5 neighboring chambers of commerce. So stay the course. You have the earlier planning process has already spoken to and addressed many of the concerns that I heard raised by folks tonight. And you know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I've lived here for over 30 years, and I'm liking what I'm seeing up there around the college right now. And but there's a big gap there. And when the rail comes, then we'll fill that in. And I will tell you, as badly as we want to, you know, bring in and attract more business in our office spaces, the rail connection is a game changer. Traffic coming eastbound in the morning is very heavy. It's almost as heavy as westbound in the morning, but it starts to thin out once you get past Pleasanton. That's where a lot of the concentration of those types of jobs are. Between the rail connection, and then, of course, then we will develop the office space and the industrial to support all of that. We will also begin to reap the benefits of the industry that will be attracted here. It is really a game changer. So stay the course. We will support you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last of the cards that I have. So if nobody wishes to speak, I'll close the public comment period. Comments from the council? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thanks for all the comments. I appreciate the time and the energy people put into that. I think many of the comments that we heard are more relevant for, you know, a later time once we've finished, you know, preparing the updating the EIR and so on, as city staff is asking for approval tonight. So I think the fact that we are eligible for this grant money, I think is a good thing. I mean, again, it comes from the state and not from city coffers, so I don't see any reason why we shouldn't move forward. I mean, it's a bit of it. I mean, it seems obvious to me that it's a chicken and egg thing, right? It's if we don't do this, the likelihood of getting Valley Link is pretty small, but then other people are advocating wait for Valley Link to show up and then build the housing. But that's just, at least from what we understand, it's not going to happen. So I think we should move forward. I certainly support the staff recommendations.
Yeah, if I could, I would echo that and add too that this is a big circular continuum here. Everything is contingent. So the rail link won't happen unless we know we've got housing coming in. Funding for the rail link isn't going to happen unless they know that the state knows that there's going to be housing coming in. And the housing is contingent on the rail link being built. So we have to commit at some point, and I think moving forward with it is the right way to go with it. Valley Link is so necessary, and my wife rides ACE, and I know how packed that is by the time it gets to downtown Livermore. And I know an alternative route to get some of those riders who get off in Pleasanton and go up to the BART train even are heavily would be less impacted if they go directly to BART, pass through Livermore. We have more Livermore residents be able to go to BART without getting on the freeway, driving 6 blocks to get there, and trying to find a place to park. So there's just a number of pluses for this too. The 4,000 units of housing is planned anyway. It's just not necessarily in this space. And since we're not at the point of looking at designs or anything else like that, I just think we need to get to that point. And so I absolutely want to move on this.
So I would echo all of that. I also am delighted to understand that it sounds like the 175,000 is not coming out of our coffers. So yay. Dublin comes up a lot as we don't want to look like Dublin. And I think that the reason that this is important is because when you have the opportunity to do a complete plan, you can control to a better extent what it's going to look like. And I think that's what this does. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I agree with the previous statements, and the way I look at this is that because we have this circular problem we keep getting ourselves into, and everybody uses it, to say do something or don't do something. But the way I look at this point is we're not making, as Vice Mayor Carling pointed out, we're not saying we're going to do the project. But what we are doing, which is very important, is we're preserving our option. And the key step to preserve the option is to authorize spending the money on the EIR, but then it's also pretty good that it's not going to be our money. So it's not coming out of the city coffers if this works out. So then the other thing is, well, why do we have to do this now? Why not wait 10 years and then do it? And I think the reason is that if we want to get reimbursed for the study, we have to do it this year, have to initiate it. So the time is ripe from that point of view. It also is that these are conversations that are going on in Sacramento right now, and that if we, and the other cities are kind of stepping up. And so it's important, I think, to send the signal that we're going to entertain this. But again, it's contingent on whether this happens. So it's not a significant incremental cost to do the EIR, and it does seem that it's timely for the two reasons I just mentioned. And the third one that Mr. Roberts pointed out is that, and others, is that we have to think about this area because it's not going to remain the way it is, because it's already zoned for various things. And this is, if we do it right, as was mentioned, a better option. So from that point of view, I look at it as there's no downside at this point, and it preserves our option, which is very important.
Okay, to address some of the comments that were made tonight, one said that there would be absolutely no positive impact on freeway traffic. However, there are 80,000 cars that go over the Altamont every day, and many of those cars are going to a BART station. And as was pointed out by Mr. Vinn, we won't need to have a large parking lot because the parking will only be for the local Livermore residents. If people are going to be taking this conveyance, Valley Link to BART, or Valley Link to ACE, or ACE to BART to Valley, or to Valley Link to BART, they're not going to sit in traffic for 2 hours to get to a parking space. They're going to stay on the other side of the hill and take Valley Link or ACE to make that connection. And I would hazard that it's going to be a rather good percentage of that 80,000 cars coming over the Altamont. So that's why we don't need the large parking structure either at Greenville or at Isabelle, is because that's going to be for local traffic. If you've got the people from the San Joaquin Valley, they're going to be parking on the other side of the Altamont and taking that conveyance in. With respect to the Valley Link isn't funded. Well, neither was BART. BART wasn't funded either. And we've actually got relatively more money now for 42 miles than we had for 5 miles of BART. And we've got more funding streams available. So yeah, Valley Link isn't completely funded, neither was BART. So we got 15 different agencies that want this to happen. With BART, We had one agency that wanted it to happen. That was the city of Livermore. And now I've got a lot more people on board to make this happen. As was pointed out by my colleagues up here, if you say there should be no housing up there until the BART train, until the Valley Link comes in, Valley Link is never going to come in because you're not going to have a train pulling in to an area where there's no people. You need to make that connectivity. Even if the Isabelle neighborhood plan is not built and if Valley Link is not built, we're still going to be paying BART taxes. So this is going to be an opportunity for actually us to get a transit connection going through the Tri-Valley. I'm on the Alameda Transportation Commission, and we have dedicated funding for this corridor. And this has to go, that $400 million from Measure BB has to stay in this corridor. And we've also got RM2 money, and we've got local money. So we've got close to $600 million, which is a lot of money on this project. And money attracts money. And there is a lot of momentum behind this that we didn't have. I mean, I fought long and hard for BART to Livermore. I did not have the momentum behind us that this project has. And we're going to be meeting day after tomorrow with 14 other agencies that want to make sure this happens. So, yeah, we could hold our breath and say, well, we're not going to do anything. And I'll guarantee if we don't, nothing's going to happen. And something else, the people that don't want this project look a lot like us. And the people that want this project are younger. And we're eventually going to have to give up this community to, Josh is nodding his head back there, yeah, to the younger folks. And I'll tell you, a lot of the folks, like my kids, the last thing that they want is a quarter-acre yard to mow. What they want is they want something that's livable, that has a quality of life, where they can walk out of their home, go down and get a cup of coffee. Quick question for staff. There's been a lot of calculations about what it would require to bring in a grocery center to a site like this. And I think the numbers are fairly close that this would support a grocery center, Mr. Vinn?
Yeah, the housing number proposed here is actually kind of at the minimum level that our economists advise would be necessary to attract a grocery store.
Because if you don't have people, you're not going to get a grocery store. Okay, so so there's been a tremendous amount of work behind this, but younger people are looking for something that's affordable, and they don't want a big yard. Now, those of us up here, we like yards. But you know what? Not everybody out there is like us. And this is a type of planning that we don't have anywhere in Livermore. We don't have a plan for younger people. And yet we need this younger demographic. We need these people that are going to be working here. Mr. Vanderwater made the point that this is going to be a game changer because it's going to allow this connectivity where we're going to have the ability to attract job sites for these young coders that are working in the tech sector. So this is going to enable us to provide housing that we don't really have right now. I think most of our apartments, we've got planners younger than our apartments. So this is forward thinking to enable us to continue this trajectory for bringing in the high quality jobs, the high quality housing, maintaining this high quality of life, and that this is going to take some of those 80,000 cars coming over the Altamont right now, because BART didn't do that. BART required those cars to come over here and park to get onto BART. Valley Link is going to intercept those cars on the other side of the Altamont and bring them in here at 15-minute and at 30-minute headways. So this is why this is a game changer, as Mr. Vanderwater pointed out. So I'm done. Anybody else?
I'll move we accept staff recommendation.
Okay, moved by Vice Mayor
I'll second
Carlin,
that.
seconded by Councilmember.
And I also want a less clumsy acronym for this rail authority, please. Total Train Over the Altamont to Livermore.
Yeah, Valley Link, linking the valleys together. There you go. Okay, motion seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Thank you for all of your comments tonight. Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, staff, too.
Okay, now the next item is what people think of our community. Hey, this is the good stuff. This is the national. This is our citizen survey about what people think of our community, and I'll tell you, they like our community. They like our. You know what? This is all old news to them. They know what a great community this is.
I don't think you've embarrassed anybody.
Yeah, so he knows how great it is. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk about the National Citizen Survey. That's 6.03, or 6.04, I'm sorry. And everybody talking about what a great community we have. So it looks like Christine Martin's going to take this one.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Christine Martin, your Deputy City Manager, and you've already given my presentation by saying that the community loves us. No, let me go through a few slides. I'll try to be brief since you've had a long meeting. Just to remind you that every 2 years since about 2004, we've conducted a national citizen survey to measure resident perceptions about the community. The data is collected and used by council and staff to inform and guide your policies in key priority areas. This year, 3,200 residents were surveyed. 740 residents responded. That is a response rate of 28%. And just for reference, typical nationwide response rates range from anywhere from 15% to 35%. So our response rate is right there in the middle. The margin of error for the entire survey is plus or minus 4%. And the data has been weighted to ensure the sample reflects the community's demographic profile. And what you're seeing here on the slide is a representation of 5 geographic sub-areas. The National Citizen Survey folks also break the data down into subgroup sub-areas. And it is important to note that the margin of error increases with that data to about 10% just because of the sample sizes varying from the different reporting areas. So on to the fun stuff, the results. As in years past, Livermore residents continue to rate our overall quality of life as excellent or good, about 4 out of 5 folks. And almost all 4 out of 5 would recommend Livermore as a place to live. Safety also continues to rate very well, with the overall feeling of safety, feeling safe in your neighborhood, and feeling safe in the downtown as excellent or good as well. We continue on with 4 out of 5 residents rating Livermore's overall appearance and reputation as excellent or good. And 4 out of 5 residents also rating Livermore's leadership and governance categories as excellent or good, and overall city services, including police, fire, and library. Another item that the National Citizen Survey captures is trends over time. Since we have been conducting the survey since 2004, the data is provided to show us the comparisons over time. So I've highlighted a few of the categories here. As you can see, appearance, quality of life, and place to live. And the bars represent, the first bar is 2004, and then 2016, and then 2018. So you can see that over time, the residents continue to rate quality of life, Livermore as a place to live, and the appearance ratings showed dramatic improvement.
I would like to point out that I was elected in 2005. Yeah, you know how the trends. Just saying.
That's a great note. All right, and on let me make sure I'm getting my right slide here. Again, this slide also shows trends over time, but three different categories: safety, services, and Livermore as a place to rate children. Those also have continued to improve since the 2004 survey. National Citizen Survey also lets us create some custom categories for questions. As you recall, Council gave us direction on those topic areas. So these 4 questions are specific just to Livermore. The first question we asked our residents was about their level of support or opposition to the city allocating funds for rideshare services or to subsidize rideshare like Uber and Lyft. And as you can see from the pie chart, 65% of our residents strongly or somewhat support this idea, and 21% strongly oppose. Our second question was related to homelessness. We asked residents to rate how important it is for the city to help fund organizations here that provide services to our homeless folks. And we also asked them to rate how important it is for the city to help provide affordable housing. And as you can see, the residents felt that was essential or very important, a strong percentage, and only about 1 in 10 finding that not at all important. And our fourth and final question, we asked residents to how much they supported or opposed the city providing workforce housing to Livermore's teachers, first responders, retail service workers, et cetera. And as you can see on the pie chart, 82% of those surveyed strongly or somewhat supported that concept, with, again, 10% strongly opposing. So in conclusion, the 2018 survey results are notably positive across a broad range of topics, and since 2004, Livermore survey results have steadily improved in a majority of areas, with significant improvement in the community's overall appearance, shopping opportunities, cultural arts and music activities, and also our downtown continues to rank much higher than the national benchmark, and also much higher than similarly sized West Coast communities. And that concludes staff's presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Questions for staff? Absolute great job, as always. I don't have any cards, so I guess everybody just takes that as given. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that for example, services, police and fire. Police, 87% approval, fire, 96%. These people are in the worst day of your life business. They're there pretty much on the worst day of your life. And yet we've got tremendous approval ratings here because they're doing a great job. The service that we provide, just to comparison, the approval of state services is 35%. Approval of Congress in December was 18%. So when you look at our approval rating, we rock. One of the things that I thought was also interesting was we used to vote on odd years. And there was actually a couple of groups opposed changing the election date from odd years to even years, because they thought that Livermore voters would get lost in the in all the balloting, and they wouldn't vote. That they would be turned off because it was too complicated. So in 2011, the last year that we voted in odd year election, it was 69% voter turnout for Livermore in the last odd year election. In 2014, it was 84%. So we had an increase of 30% by moving to the even year elections. 2018, 92% voted, according to this survey. 92%. The state average was 49.6. And so we have greater participation because that people love this community because their voices are being heard. And they're turning out in record numbers here. And we got greater participation. So I think it was a great move the council and the people made, because we put that on the ballot to change it, and the people saw that that was a good thing. So I agree. Yeah, yeah. Saved us close to $750,000 now. So that was also a good move on a lot of counts. So I think we should keep doing the survey. I think it's telling us great information that we are doing what the people in this community want, that they feel that they're being heard, and that they like the direction of the city.
So I was curious about the range of the error bars. It says, so there's a number of things that they just dipped just a little bit this year, but it says similar error bars.
4% plus or minus.
So really within range.
It's in the noise.
If you've got a 2-point differential,
okay,
you've got virtually the
and
same.
it probably was there, and I probably missed it. And then the other thing I noticed is that I think that we are seeing some of the economic problems showing up around housing. And mental health, I noticed, is not an area that we seem particularly strong in. There were a couple of other areas that I thought were interesting. But it was fun to look through.
The other thing I think we ought to really acknowledge is that the amount of credit that the staff is due, because a couple of us have been around here a long time, but others come and go. But the staff has been consistent, and it's this wouldn't happen without the quality of what we have in support here.
Well, and by the way, you mentioned the downtown. Last year, Livermore downtown was rated the #1 downtown in the entire East Bay. Yeah. So according to the best of the East Bay from the Valley Times, we had the best downtown in the East Bay.
Every time I go somewhere with other people from other cities, they're like admire our downtown.
Yeah.
One of my favorite jokes is actually say, "I'll meet you in Livermore downtown," but you talk to my friends at the Dublin Council and say, "Hey, I'll meet you downtown Dublin." It's like, yeah, find it.
Where is it? Yeah. All right. Okay then. So do we move to do we accept this report, or just listen to the good news? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the council reports and matters initiated. Councilmember Coomber?
I just went to one meeting, and that was last Monday, and of course left all my notes at home. So I'm going to report on that farther down the line. As for matters initiated, an interesting conversation this afternoon. I thought about the way we promote some of our history around here, and I wonder why or if there could be along city-owned paths or hiking trails in the viticulture areas of the city that would explain the history, that explain where the Cresta Blanca winery is, where the original wineries were, and who brought them here, and have a walking trail somewhere through where you could follow these signboards and see where you're going. If you go to Sycamore Grove, you see them all the time, but all you see there are salamanders and things like that. So, you do this with the winery. It helps promote our region a little bit, and it's something we can do to help out.
At the Wente Winery, at the Cresta Blanca site, there's a great plaque talking about the decision of 1889 and Charles Wetmore. Yeah, well, that's a public space. You're hanging it. Yeah, but it's a big plaque though to put in a public space. But yeah, interesting. So,
would the council like some information back on what an approach might be to create such a thing and how to assign it?
Sure. Councilmember Monroe?
Could you also enlist LARPD in that?
Yeah.
That was going to be my first thing, is who else to have help me on that one. So absolutely.
On March 28th, along with a number of other council members and vice mayors and mayors, I attended the retirement events for Public Works Director Darren Greenwood and Lieutenant John Hurd. And these are wonderful because they are unlike a funeral, which is where you tell people why you think how they're wonderful, only they're not there to hear it, these were events where two very dedicated, long-term public servants were honored, and were actually there to hear it and to appreciate it. And I was deeply moved by seeing how our city has been served. On March 29th, I flew down and back to Costa Mesa to meet with the League of California Cities public policy meetings on community services, and homelessness was right up there front and center, so was affordable housing. One of the presentations was by the City of Costa Mesa, which has just opened a wraparound service for just its own homeless. Apparently there are precisely 78 of them, and this will house 62. It will provide all services to them. So it was interesting to hear that other cities in California are working on the same problems we all face. April 3rd, LCAC meeting, and discuss the possibility of a storage and scene shop brought up as matters initiated by Councilmember Werner, was endorsed, and I have a couple of letters that encouraging us to go forward with that. April 5th, I was appointed to an ABAG MTC housing legislative working group, which is going to monitor and advise the many bills making their way through the legislature, which were generated by the housing crisis. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Change is coming. We either take hold of it and make it happen in a way that works for us, or it happens to us whether we want it to or not. So I'm not entirely sure what this working group will do. It's advisory. I am, at the very least, it will enable Livermore to understand what's going to be happening. I really hope that they actually will listen to us. And then I wanted to respond to Greg Scott's comments earlier. And I want to say I really appreciate the frustration and anger that drives you, Greg, and that around this really important issue. I appreciate the weekly comments, keeping this issue of homelessness fresh in our minds. I frankly can't find a good way to express my own frustration at the problems we all face with regard to affordable housing and homelessness. We are one city in a region, in a state, in a nation, in a world, and we have only a limited impact. My comments at last council meeting, we have limited ability to solve these problems. I'm going to continue to say we do the best we can, and it's frustrating. Unless we want to really, change the entire economic and social structure that we live in, and I don't really feel like I have the power to do that. So keep on keeping on. It's all we can do.
Councilmember Warner.
Well, I was at a LAVTA meeting. As I recall, it was routine, and the company, the Wheels is doing well. I mean, that's the bottom line there. And I do agree that those retirement ceremonies are quite moving, and it's good to see people going on to the next stage of life, and they're going to enjoy it. So that was good. I have one just real quick question. When does the west side of Veterans Way, those fences come down and the other ones go up? Do you have an approximate date for that?
Within the next 2 weeks. We're getting pretty close.
Vice Mayor Carling?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, they're going to stripe Veterans Way pretty soon, so it's really moving along. So on March 27th, I attended a Stop Waste meeting. On the 28th, some of these next few ones I was subbing for the mayor who was out of town. I did a panel at Livermore High School on what will it take. This is about gun violence and safety in schools and so on and so forth. The chief and I were part of a panel that included Superintendent of Schools Kelly Bowers, Head of the School Board Craig Bueno,
Sean Wilson,
and a woman representing some other organization that I can't remember.
Choose Love.
Choose Love. Thank you,
Charlotte Lewis.
Right.
I wasn't
the
there.
mayor did Granada. I did Livermore High. So that's that evening. Well, so that day also, I was attended the retirement ceremonies. And then in the evening, I went over to the Fox Theater in Oakland for the East Bay Innovation Awards. I've been over there before, both as a nominee and once I was elected to council. It's an interesting, eclectic bunch of folks and awards given to anybody that's creating sort of new and innovative things, whether it's food. So, for example, one of the nominees around food was some food that were teas that had cannabis in them. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, and that didn't win, so I didn't enjoy it. No. And so on. But Lawrence Livermore was also recognized with a Legacy Award, so they got an award. And by the way, MC Hammer was there. So, yeah, right. And then on the 30th, I subbed again for the mayor for an Eagle Court of Honor, which is always a meaningful event for me, having been a Boy Scout for many years. So, Eagle Scout, right. So regarding matters initiated, this is around Planning Commission. We got a suggestion from City Attorney of a couple of different options. As you may know, one of our recently appointed planning commissioners is resigning due to his schedule, a promotion to deputy city manager in San Ramon. This is Stephen Spadowski. So it's incumbent upon us to find a fifth planning commissioner. So my suggestion is that we repost and we ask the four other candidates that we interviewed that evening, if they're interested in being considered, and we will accept, if that's true, then we'll accept the written material they've already provided to us, but that we would re-interview, assuming that we get other additional candidates, that we'd re-interview everybody. That's my suggestion as a path forward for replacing Stephen.
So I have a thought. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it, but I don't
There's
need
two people so far.
Okay. Given that one set is already interviewed and they know the questions, I don't see a need to re-interview the people we've already interviewed because it's fairly recent. So I would just interview any new applicants, but I've got all my notes and I understand what happened the first time around, and I think re-interviewing somebody would give them actually an unfair advantage over people who were just interviewing for the first time. So I would only interview people once.
I don't have my notes anymore. Did you keep them? No, I didn't think so. You don't have my notes.
I'll give you my notes.
No, I'm talking about the ones I wrote down. So what's the pleasure?
I guess so.
So if I could poke around just a bit on what's been proposed, you indicated that you would accept all applicants who would reapply, or would the city council like to, again, select from the group of applicants that do submit their candidacy, and then choose from those who you'd like to interview? Because it sounds like you've got the four you previously interviewed, call them back, repost, receive new applications. Among those, do you want to select from those which to interview, or do you want to just interview all those who submit applications?
Select again.
Yeah.
Same process. I don't see any reason to change the process. We're just opening up the window. And it's not unlike, when you have some incumbent that doesn't decide to re-up for election, then you keep the window open again or something. But so I would just let's not change the process. Let's just open the same process up again.
That's a much simpler way to phrase it. So we're reopening the process, we're reposting and soliciting new applications, but we're just caring for those 4 who were previously interviewed.
If they're interested.
If they're interested.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. With that direction, we can implement.
Without necessarily interviewing the 4 that already were interviewed.
We don't need to re-interview.
That'll be your decision when you get your candidate pool. You can give us that direction at that time.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay. All right.
Perfect. Is that good? Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so thank you for covering for all those items. Certainly appreciate that. And so I got back a little early and was able to catch Lieutenant Hurd's retirement. That was a great event, and we have a lot of great people here, and they do a lot of great work for the community. And this morning, I was at the Alameda County Transportation Commission. I was the Planning, Policy, and Legislative Committee. We went over a number of different proposed bills, AB 659, AB 1350, SB 127, which is an interesting bill because this is by Senator Wiener, that would establish a division of active transportation within the Department of Transportation and require that an undersecretary of the Transportation Agency be assigned to give attention to active transportation. Yeah. One of my concerns was the creation of a whole new division and another bureaucracy and what this would do to the timing of a project, because it also requires the formation of a project development team specific to each project. And this would be specifically for increasing safety for pedestrians and bicyclists and the implementation of those facilities. So that's something to pay attention to. And also SB 152, which is also about active transportation and have changes to that plan. So the Transportation Commission voted to support all of these, some recommending amendments, and moving ahead and again, closely watching all of these. So that was it for today. With that, I have no matters to initiate. Thank you all much for your comments tonight, and thank you for your great work. We're adjourned.